Okay, Chair, we're now streaming live on YouTube. I hand the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Good evening and welcome everyone to East Devon District Council's Cabinet meeting for the 14th of July 2021. I'm your Chair, Councillor Arnott. I would also like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via live stream. Cabinet members are here today present at Blackdown House, with other participants taking part remotely. And as well as being live streamed, the meeting's being recorded, so please bear this in mind throughout and be careful with your language. The code of conduct applies throughout the meeting, and we reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who disrupts. Please remember to turn your telephone devices off or set them to silent. And as happens each time, I will now do that myself. As this cabinet meeting is dependent upon internet connection and a power supply, if we lose either of them, we will try to reconnect, but if after 15 minutes we are unable to, we will have to adjourn and reconvene at a later date with details on our website. Please can you make sure your microphones are kept muted when you're not speaking, and I'd be grateful if you could keep your points short and not repeat points that have already been made, and of course don't interrupt. Thank you. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting, and any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Committee, can you please now unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm you are here by saying following. Present here in Blackdown House. When you have confirmed you're present, please mute your microphone again.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Arnott.
Present here at Blackdown House.
Councillor Hayward.
Present here at Blackdown House, thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Present here at Blackdown House.
Councillor Hookway.
Nick.
Councillor Hookway.
He's just plugging in, as they say, Amanda. So can we? Okay. He's just pressing some keys. I think he's just brought Richard Branson down from outer space by mistake and rolled that in. So can we move on past Nick then and see who's next?
Councillor Jackson.
Councillor Jackson, we know, has apologised, and I'll only make one comment on that, which may be of interest to one political group here, and I'll say no more. She's absent because she's only just had her first jab. Next, please.
Councillor Young.
Present at Blackdown House.
Councillor Loudon.
Evening, Amanda. Yes, present here in Blackdown House.
Councillor Rickson.
Councillor Rickson is present, but she's having trouble connecting via computer at the moment. Although, Councillor Rickson, can you put on Councillor Hookway's headphones just for a moment? Is that possible? And confirm your presence.
Councillor Rickson, present at Blackdown House.
Thank you.
Thank you. And going back to Councillor Hookway.
Apologies here for that. Yes, present at Blackdown House, yes.
Thank you. I can confirm that you are quorate today, Chair.
Thank you.
Sorry, Amanda. I don't think you mentioned me yet.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, Councillor Rowland. Councillor Rowland, last but not least.
I thought I was going to be discharged on good.
Oh.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm present and almost correct in Blackdown House.
Of course you are. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Over to you.
Right, thank you very much, Amanda. We go on now to agenda item 1, public speaking. We have one speaker registered. Mr. Robert Cathro wishes to speak on agenda item 17, consideration of the variance of the Exmouth ASB Public Spaces Protection Order 2020 to
You are.
2023.
Okay.
Do
Okay.
we, Debbie or Amanda, do we have Mr. Cathro online already on his mobile?
Yes,
Okay.
Chair, we do. Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Cathro, please, in your own time, 3 minutes, and you'll be given a 30-second verbal warning, it says here, but, indication when you're coming to the end at 2 minutes 30. Mr. Cathro, please.
Okay, thank you for that, Chair, and good evening to members of the Cabinet and other councillors. My name is Robert Cathro. I'm a resident in Exmouth, and thanks for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'll be brief. Whilst I and other residents recognise the challenges faced in managing East Devon and Exmouth, I and a rapidly growing number of residents are increasingly unhappy, indeed very unhappy indeed, with the rising and repeating instances of antisocial behaviour and the seeming impossibility of controlling it in the town. In almost every aspect of life in the town, this problem confronts the residents every day, all year. Now, a number of people attending the meeting, I've spoken to at length over the last few years, and there won't be any surprises in the issues I'm going to raise. There's antisocial driving, I think colloquially known as boy racers. You'll be aware of the Avenues survey, which is another facet of antisocial driving going on at the moment. Camper vans and the lack of control of camper vans, control of dogs, and other antisocial behaviour, including that on the water. And to give a little bit of detail, the antisocial driving on the prom is every night and some days and every evening, and there's blatant flouting of the law. The problems with camper vans are perhaps too numerous to mention this evening, and I know Mr. Wellen and Mr. Ennis and I have been in routine communication about this. In terms of dogs, there's restricted areas, as you'd be well aware, on the beach and other areas. These restrictions are flouted daily. There were 25 dogs in the space of about an hour and a half this afternoon while I was on the beach in the restricted areas. And finally, in terms of general antisocial behaviour, we get a lot of drug use, jet skis on the water. This evening, there's a jet ski out there at speed by the Mamhead Slipway, 50 knots. And there was a water skier yesterday who proceeded along the whole of the channel and up the river towards Topsham. It's a last couple of points because I'm coming to the end of what I want to say. It's a great pity we haven't attracted some of the £350,000 that was made available. I'm not sure why not. Perhaps that's something the Cabinet's already working on. The good news, I guess, in all of this is next week there's a meeting between myself, East Devon District Council, the police and Devon County Council, in which 5 other residents will be attending. And we all look forward to working not on demonstrating that we've got these problems, but some constructive ideas and a plan for their solutions. What we're
30
interested
seconds remaining.
Thank you. What we're interested in that meeting is how we're going to do it, who's going to do it, and when. And thank you on behalf of all the puzzled and vexed residents across the town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I can't confirm it right now because it wouldn't be appropriate. It comes up and you'll still be listening, I'm sure, at the appropriate agenda item.
Sure.
But we will have there is some news from a meeting yesterday with the Police and Crime Commissioner in terms of some funds that have actually been allocated to us to help with this. So that'll come back, that'll come up under the agenda item. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, right. So that's agenda item 1 done, and thank you to Mr. Cathro. Agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meetings. If anyone has a comment on the set of minutes from the 9th of June 2021, please do this by raising your electronic hand. If I have no hands raised, I'll take this as an indication you will agree the minutes of the previous meeting. I see no hands raised, and therefore those are agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 3, Amanda, apologies.
Yes, I have 2 apologies. One's from a Cabinet member, Councillor Dan Ledger, although he does hope to join us a little bit later. And the other one is from Councillor Ian Hall.
Okay, thank you very much. And I have just can confirm at this point that Councillor Sarah Jackson is present, but she is not, for reasons I mentioned earlier, present at Blackdown House, but she is on screen. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest, which will be done by a roll call by Amanda again, please.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott.
None, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Hayward.
Oh, Amanda, I'm terribly sorry. That's absolutely wrong. We have an agenda item later regarding Collison's neighbourhood plan, and I am a Collison Parish Councillor. Thank you. So that's a personal interest.
Thank you. Councillor Hayward.
Thank you. I have a personal interest in item 18, the additional restrictions grant, as I'm the chair of the ARG panel. Also item 20, the former Millway Rise football pitch at Axminster site agenda item. I have been involved in discussions with officers and other members regarding that previously. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
None, thank you.
Councillor Hookway.
Yes, please. Item 17 on the agenda, Exmouth ASB Public Space Order. I am a board member for Littleham and also chair of the Queen's Drive Delivery Group, of which part of this order may apply to. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson. No, I beg your pardon. Councillor Jackson's watching us virtually. Councillor Young.
None, thank you.
Councillor Loudon.
None, Amanda, thanks.
Councillor Rickson.
Amanda, again, she's just having some microphone difficulties at the moment, so perhaps we'll try and come back to her later in the meeting when we know she's in properly. Okay, and Councillor Rowland.
Personal interest in agenda item 24, Suit Jurassic, as a Suit ward member.
Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Agenda item 5 is late items or matters of urgency. And we have two matters to be dealt with in this way this evening. Agenda item 10 is the minutes of the LED Monitoring Forum held on the 6th of July 2021, and an item that will come up as part B, agenda item 26, street scene recruitment and retention. Agenda item 6, confidential or exempt items. As mentioned just now, there is one which officers recommend should be dealt with in this way, agenda item 26, street scene recruitment and retention. Agenda item 7 is the forward plan, and I'd just like to ask if members are happy to note that item. If anybody is right, so we've got some people speaking on this. Can I come to Councillor Bruce de Sarum, please?
Good evening, Chair, and thank you so much. Just a very quick question, going back to the original paperwork back in May when the Cabinet spoke about it. On item 5.7, it said, in order to enable the decision to be in place, it makes a very tight timescale. To complete by 31st of March, we will need towns and parishes to have made their decisions by the 1st of November. And it goes on to say that we will therefore need to issue draft heads of terms by the 1st of August. Now, I must apologise to my fellow Exmouth members if I've missed it, but I don't believe that the Exmouth Town Council has actually begun the debates on toilets. I did ask the clerk, and I copied the mayor, who is with us on the call tonight, back in July to actually I raised this point. And I've not had any feedback from the Town Council. So I'm wondering whether it is appropriate for you to continue with it and maybe push it back by another month, because obviously if town councils like Exmouth haven't begun their discussions, then they might be seen to be bounced into make a decision if we have to give them the drafts ahead by the 1st of August. So I know the Mayor, Councillor Gazard, is on the call tonight. Maybe he has more news, but certainly to the best of my knowledge, I personally wouldn't be able to make any recommendations by 1st of August because we haven't had the discussion at the Town Council. So thank you so much, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor De Serem. That's a very valuable piece of information. And I think what we'll do there is, if it's okay with you, we'll discuss this with officers afterwards. Obviously, the forward plan is to an extent something that is a movable feast. But this is a good point. And I'm sure there are many other actual places as well that need to think about this. I don't think, unless Andrew Hancock is desperate to come in and comment on this at this stage, and I don't think he is, we'll just note that comment. Thank you very much, Councillor De Serem. Councillor Bruce Gazzard, please. Oh, sorry, Councillor Steve Gazzard. I don't know.
No,
Very good, Chair. Very good.
no. I sometimes think Bruce and I are twins, actually. Councillor Bruce raises a very good point, Chair. And it's not for the want of the clerk or myself asking East Devon for the information. We just haven't received the information. So there is no way at the moment that the town council can even think about discussing the issues, because we haven't received anything whatsoever from either Streets team or East Devon itself. So would appreciate it if it could be chased up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, I'm sure officers have noted that, and I'm sure that will happen. And I hope we can then flush this issue out as fast as possible. And, I know. Where's Eileen Ragg when you need her for a 10-minute routine on that theme? Good evening, Eileen. So agenda item, so I just then have to ask again, Cabinet, I hope you're happy to note this item as long as there are no hands against it. I think that's okay. Happy to note it. Oh, in fact, no, we better take a vote. So can you just put your yellow hands up if you can, or blue hands, or whatever they are tonight. Green ticks, please. Green ticks. Okay, that looks pretty much. Let's just have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. That's the majority of those present, definitely. Okay, thank you. And I know that Councillor Rickson is still trying to find a way to connect in, and she's being helped at the moment by one of our officers. Agenda item 8, the minutes of the budget setting and capital allocations panel held on the 18th of June 2021. Any members from outside Cabinet wish to comment on those at all? If not, members of Cabinet, can I ask you to indicate that you're happy to note those minutes by means of a green tick? Okay, again, thank you very much. That's gone through in a majority. No abstentions, none against. Agenda item 9, the minutes of the Strategic Planning Committee held on the 22nd of June 2021. We have one recommendation for Cabinet that will resolve in an action being taken, and this is minute 6, the joint strategy for East Devon, Exeter, Mid Devon and Tingbridge. That we agree option 5 as set out in the report, and agree the scope, resourcing, timetable and governance arrangements set out in this report for preparing a non-statutory joint strategy for East Devon, Exeter, Mid Devon and Tingbridge Council, and agree that as part of engaging the consultant and their brief, each authority will consume its own housing numbers. Committee, are you happy to note those minutes? Green ticks.
Leader, can I suggest that you note the minutes and agree that you're taking into account that recommendation as part of item 14, because you've got a specific report on it.
Exactly. I was wondering how. Thank you very much, Henry, because Ed's coming up on that on item 14. So let's just note those minutes now. But can I? Let's just. Okay. Are you saying, Henry, we don't actually need to take any formal vote on that because it's coming up later?
Yes, you've got the recommendation in front of you in item 14 anyway.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 10, the minutes of the LED Monitoring Forum held on the 6th of July 2021, 2 recommendations. Henry, is that similar, or do we take those recommendations at this point?
Yeah, so they do need to be voted on because you haven't got anything else on the agenda tonight in relation to it.
Okay, so I will read them out for the benefit of anybody watching who cannot see an agenda. So minute 62, the leisure strategy, that a recommendation be made to council for the approval of a maximum budget of £25,000 towards the production of a leisure strategy for the council, which may be part funded from a Sports England grant with the balance met from the Transformation Fund. And minute 66, Cloak and Lawns update, that a confidential consultation meeting on the proposal to move health and leisure offer to Cloak and Lawns Sports Club be set up with the stakeholder membership agreed by the chair of the LED Monitoring Forum, and that no press statements are released by the council until such discussions are complete. Members, are you happy to note those minutes? Can you give me a green tick, red cross, or abstain? Thank you. Okay, and that's the majority of all of those present. Thank you very much. Agenda item 11, in which I have declared a personal interest because I am a Colleton Parish Councillor, and this is the response to the Colleton Neighbourhood Plan. Non-members, would any non-member like to speak on this subject? Non-member of Cabinet, that is. Yes, Councillor Helen Parr, please.
Thank you. Yes, this is very helpful. The comments of the District Council have in the past helped write the plan, and Colleton Parish Council, I told them at their meeting on Monday that there were going to be these comments put forward by the District Council and that they weren't controversial, and the council didn't wish to make any comments. So I actually wish to take this opportunity to thank the officers for all their help in the production of the plan up to this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Parr. Would anybody else wish to speak on that? Okay, so we have two recommendations there. One, that Cabinet note the formal submission of the Colleton Neighbourhood Plan and congratulate the producers of the plan on their dedicated hard work and commitment in producing the document. Cabinet, I would like to, with your permission, amend that recommendation very slightly to congratulate the producers of the plan and members of the public for their dedicated hard work and commitment in producing the document, because there's been a substantial contribution from people, particularly in the Colliford part of Colleton. So I hope that's agreeable to you. Did you capture that, Henry, as a slight amendment to that? Okay, thank you very much. And then number 2 is the Cabinet make the proposed representation set out in paragraph 1.19 in this report in response to the consultation. I think I need to seek a seconder for my alternate recommendation. That's Councillor Rowland has seconded that, so thank you very much. So can we go to the vote on that, please? Green ticks, red crosses, etc. Okay, that's gone through unanimously. Thank you very much. We now come to another neighbourhood plan, agenda item 12, the response to the Dalwood neighbourhood plan submission. Would any members from outside Cabinet wish to speak on that? Please raise your hands if you would like to do so. If not, then we have the recommendations, which are along the lines of the recommendations for Colleton made before. I'm just turning the pages here. Forgive me for a moment as I get to that Dalwood recommendation, which is here. The Cabinet note the formal submission of the Dalwood neighbourhood plan and congratulate the producers of the plan on their dedicated hard work and commitment in producing the document, and that Cabinet make proposed representation set out at paragraph 1.19 in this report in response to the consultation. Councillor Jack Rowland, please.
Thank you, Chair. In line with what you suggested as amendments on the concept, also suggest that recommendation 1 also incorporates thanking members of the public as well. So it reads exactly the same as the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowland. Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second that. I do know both the former clerk of Dalwood Parish Council and the current clerk, and both have worked very hard. So I'd be delighted to second Councillor Rowland's recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. In which case, let us go to a vote on that, please, now. Yes, that's gone through unanimously as well. Thank you very much. And then the next agenda item is agenda item 13, which is the response to the Broadhembury Parish Council Community Governance Review. And sorry, I've said that as if it's another neighbourhood plan. It absolutely isn't. This is a community governance review for Broadhembury Parish Council. And we've got a report here from our CEO, Mr. Mark Williams, please. Mark.
Thank you. So slightly unusual request in that I don't often get parish councils asking to increase the number of councillors. Normally it's the other way round because they can't fill the vacancies they've got, but you can see that they want to go from 9 to 12, which would give a ratio of 1 councillor to 48 electors. That being said, I have been in extensive correspondence and they believe it is important for the effective governance of their parish. So the recommendation is as set out that we undertake a review and establish whether it's something to be further recommended in due course.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. So would any members from outside of Cabinet wish to speak on that? If not, I'll come to Councillor Paul Hayward, please, first.
Thank you, Chair. May I just, through you, ask Mr. Williams what, if any, the likely cost of this community governance review will be, and who bears that cost?
So the cost will essentially be my time and also postage costs of consulting with electors of the parish. So what we're talking 600 or so electors, so sending out letters to the residents of the parish. And we bear the cost.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Councillor John Loudon, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question to the Chief Executive. I note that at page 75, the Parish Council, in its conclusion, says that it wishes to see an increase from 9 to 12. And you said a minute ago that would give 1 to 48, one representative per 48 electors. Does it have to be to 12? Can it be any other number? Because I'm just wondering what the rationale for picking 12 out. Is it that 1 to 48 is the norm? Just trying to get a feel for this, Mark.
Well, so no, I mean, I think normally you try and talk around 1 to 250 or so in terms of parishes. But, you know, the parish council have set out their case. And, you know, I don't think it's unreasonable to at least carry out the consultation to see what the view of the parish is. But to answer your first question, it doesn't have to be 12. It could be 10, could be 11, could be stay the same. But the first round of consultation will give us the views of those residents who want to express a view on the matter. And that will be interesting to see what they say, essentially.
Thank you very much, Mark. Committee then, there are no other speakers. Can I seek, please, a proposer and a seconder for this? You're all pressing stuff, but I can't hear anybody. John, yes, so Councillor Loudon is proposing and Councillor Rowland is seconding. Thank you very much indeed. Can we vote on that then, please, now? Okay, and that is unanimous amongst those present in the room. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Mark. Right, we now go on to agenda item 14, which is, as was referred to earlier, under the minutes from strategic planning, an item about the joint strategy for East Devon, Exeter, Mid Devon and Timbridge. And I'm hoping that Mr. Freeman, who I bumped into earlier, has got home in time to do this. Yes, he has. There he is. Fantastic. So can I introduce, please, Ed Freeman, Service Lead Planning, Strategy and Development Management. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So this report follows on from a report that members will recall came before Cabinet in November last year, where members agreed to produce a joint plan in partnership with the other Greater Exeter authorities previously involved in the Greater Exeter Strategic Plan to form a joint strategy and infrastructure plan on a non-statutory basis. And that same resolution was made by the other partner authorities at the end of last year. That resolution included bringing forward a further report to detail the scope of the plan, a timetable for its production, governance arrangements, and to deal with budgetary considerations. And this is that report to cover off those issues. So the report starts by giving some background about the reasons for the need to produce this plan, which fundamentally relate to complying with the duty to cooperate, continue joint working on planning matters between the partner authorities, establishing a recognisable brand for the area to assist in making bids to governments, and enabling local authorities to continue to share expertise and jointly commission work. In terms of the scope of the plan, which is covered by section 2 of the report, it is considered important in that it would provide an opportunity for the authorities to jointly identify a clear, ambitious future for the area, commitment to joint working. There's still a number of key strategic issues facing the area that are jointly faced by the partner authorities, as a prospectus for seeking external funding, and that this be a living document that can be easily amended and evolve over time. In terms of resourcing, a number of options have been considered, but fundamentally, given each of the partners authorities' commitment to producing a local plan, indeed ourselves over the next couple of years, it was considered that option 5, as detailed in the report, which is to appoint consultants to undertake this work on our behalf, is the most appropriate way of achieving the objectives of production of the plan. It should be noted that sufficient funds are available in the remaining budget left over from GESP to cover the additional budgets being requested at this time. In terms of the timetable, you'll see at paragraph 4.1 in the report that the proposal is further to formal agreement in June, July, to move forward and undertake the commissioning of the consultants and various member and stakeholder engagement throughout the tail end of this year, early next year, with a view to producing a draft joint strategy for public consultation next summer and ultimately hopefully adoption of the plan September, October next year. In terms of the governance arrangements, there's a detailed diagram in Appendix B, which details how this plan is intended to be overseen. A number of these groups exist already in terms of a leaders group and relevant portfolio holders group, which has been meeting in the months since the commitment was made to production of this plan to help to refine these details and bring this forward. There's also a principals group that meets primarily the chief executives, but supported in an advisory capacity, as you can see in the diagram, by Homes England and the LEP. And also a project assurance group made up of myself and my counterparts at the neighbouring authorities, all to oversee the plan, and would be supported by a member working group that to be established, working through these issues in terms of production of the plan with each of the neighbouring authorities. And you can see stemming from that group also a project lead and officer working group. Those roles are then explained in more detail on the subsequent page. So hopefully those details align with members' wishes in terms of production of the plan, and the recommendations are as detailed at the start of the report, so members are asked to approve the scope of the joint strategy for East Devon, Exeter, Mid Devon and Teignbridge as set out in section 2 of the report. Approve the proposed resourcing of the plan as per option 5 in the report, which is the commissioning of consultants. Approve the timetable for production of the plan as detailed in paragraph 4.1 of the report, and approve the proposed governance arrangements set out in Appendix B of the report. As the Chair has already detailed, this matter was already considered by Strategic Planning Committee on the 20th of October and is recommended by that committee to Cabinet for agreement. There was one proviso coming from the discussion at Strategic Planning Committee that related to a proviso that the joint strategy be produced on the basis that each partner authority meets its own housing needs. So members will wish, no doubt, to consider that recommendation from Strategic Planning Committee. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ed, for that report and for the excellent work that I know you've been involved in. And it's been my pleasure to be involved in some of those meetings. This has come forward from very unified discussions from the 4 authorities. And I think it's particularly worth noticing or noting, with your reference to the matters in the appendices, that I am much more confident now that we have resolved the problems, perhaps with perceived problems, but I believe they were real problems with the democratic involvement of members of all the authorities in relation to this moving forward. So I welcome this, I welcome the recommendations, and thank you very much for that. I suppose what we're saying is we're looking to add a 5th recommendation, aren't we? And the wording, I think, Ed, you probably had some quite elegant wording for that. And if I were to put in something like that, we all consume our own smoke, that's not really what we're saying, is it? What would your suggested wording be for that 5th recommendation to reflect what was said at strategic planning?
Chair, I think the word I used was that each of the partner authorities meets their own housing need. Was the wording I used, which was my understanding of the wishes of Strategic Planning Committee. It should, of course, be noted that through the duty to cooperate, we will have to work through those sorts of issues with the partner authorities through the local plan production process in any event. Thank you. Okay,
that's very helpful. Thank you very much. So can we bear that in mind, committee? That the 5th recommendation might be that each of the housing authorities meet their own housing need. So coming now, please, to outside of Cabinet, if there's anybody there. I see no hands, in which case I'll come to Councillor Sarah Jackson first. Sarah, please.
Just a query on what's the most appropriate term, whether it's housing need or housing allocation. Might be the same thing.
Ooh, that's a nice distinction. Ed or Henry, need against allocation. What do we think on that?
Well, I think through you, Chair, I think need is perhaps the more appropriate at this stage, because the plan is not intending to make allocations.
All right, cracking point though. Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Are you happy with that answer, Councillor Jackson, or would you like to come back?
I guess I'm kind of referring more to the allocations as imposed by central government for each of the districts, as opposed to the allocations assigned to the various different areas within the district.
Okay, Ed, that is an interesting point, isn't it? Although I think this covers it, doesn't it? Because if what you're bound to do is to look after your own housing need, that does, doesn't it? There's an implication there that if the numbers for Teignbridge are different from ours and whatever, and they can't meet theirs, I think it's implied in that, isn't it, that we're not taking theirs, so to speak. Is that fair to say?
I think so, yes, Chair. And as I said, I think it's only a working assumption, because we have to work through these issues with the partner authorities under the duty to cooperate through the local plan process anyway. But this joint strategy is not looking to make allocations. So it would be simply considering how need is assessed and met.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Jackson, are you content with that for the moment?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Jack Rowland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question to Ed Freeman, really, in connection with the resourcing plan that was mentioned in option 5. I'm very much wearing my finance portfolio hat when I read this, where it's talking about the additional cost resource is available from the gas budget. And it's talking about the tender recruitment process. Would that be on a fixed cost basis so we do keep within that budget?
Ed, are you happy to take that one?
Yes, certainly, Chair. I don't think it would be certainly wouldn't be usual practice to try and tender on a fixed cost basis. I think it's quite hard for us as officers to estimate the cost other than within a range, which is what we've sought to do. But we are convinced, and this is officers across all the 4 partner authorities, they now experience that the budget that exists is sufficient to meet the likely cost of production of the plan. But it will obviously be interesting to see what tenders are submitted and the quality of those submissions to make sure that we get the quality outputs rather than just appoint consultants on the basis of cost alone.
Supplementary, Councillor Rowland, or?
No. I just might come back to Hornshead at some point in the future.
He was taking.
If we go above budget.
He was taking a lot of notes there, Ed, I have to say. Okay, coming to Councillor Marianne Rickson, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to the timetable. I note that the public consultation is scheduled for July, August. And this is obviously going to be peak holiday time. So we may get a poor response. Is there any possibility of moving this forward to June, July? So it would be June, perhaps to the mid-July period before the school holidays?
Ed, bit of a curved ball for you there.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I think it's a good point in that we wouldn't usually seek to consult on an important document like this during the key summer holidays. I think once we've got consultants on board, we will need to look to discuss this timetable in more detail with them and what can be achieved. But certainly happy to take that comment away and seek to try and avoid in any future timetable consulting over the main school holidays, because I can see the obvious problems with doing that. So yes, I think that's a good point, which happy to take on board.
Thank you, Ed. Councillor Rickson, are you happy with that answer, or is there another one coming?
I'm happy with that response.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much indeed. So, Mr. Freeman, and thank you, Ed. Mr. Freeman has already read out what the recommendations are. So, can I, Cabinet, ask for a proposer and a seconder for those? By means of a hand, or so, Councillor, I've got Councillor Hayward for proposing, and Councillor Rickson's seconding.
Chair.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Hayward.
Yeah, may I just say, just for the purposes of clarity, just confirm. So we have the 4 recommendations as listed, and then we have this additional recommendation regarding the housing need from each partner. Just the wording of that, because obviously it starts with that Cabinet recommends that Council : perhaps it might be endorses the principle that each district meets its own housing need. Would that be appropriate? Would that work? Perhaps Mr. Freeman can confirm. Would that meet? Is that clear enough?
Ed, would that be okay for you?
Yes, Chair. From my point of view, that's clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll take that as recommendation 5, proposed as one of the 5 recommendations by Councillor Hayward and seconded by Councillor Rickson. So can we now go to a vote, please, Cabinet, green ticks and so forth. Thank you very much. So that's 8 votes for. That's unanimous for those present. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you again, Mr. Freeman. I personally absolutely welcome this transition into well, it's not a new era. Let's not over dramatise, but we've got a really good way forward there. Working, as you say, it is absolutely critical, both legally and I think morally, that we do have a duty to cooperate with the other authorities. And I look forward to further conversations with all the leaders over the coming months. Agenda item 15 is the Revenue and Capital Outturn Report for 2020 to 2021. And I believe we have a report here from Mr. John Symes, the Finance Manager. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. The report contains a lot of detail. I was just intending on highlighting the final positions of three main sections of the report. The first being the general fund. The outturn position is a favourable variance of 333,000 against a net budget of 15.225 million. Report includes details on the general and service specific variances. That's at table at 2.2. There is a lot of detail in that table, and a lot of it will be familiar to members. That's including additional costs like LED, costs around refuse and recycling, including the large reductions in income that we saw, but also the government grant income that's helped offset those costs. The biggest update in the report since the last budget monitoring report brought to Cabinet is the final favourable outturn of 1.2 million relating to business rates income. This is with government grant mitigating the impact of the pandemic. The favourable outturn leaves the general fund balance at 4.728 million, which reduces to 4.606 million with the use of 122,000 21-22 budget. So the remaining balance of 806,000 over the upper end of the adopted general fund balance range. It's recommended to be transferred to the medium-term financial plan risk reserve. There's already £2 million in this reserve, and it's been set up to mitigate against the risks in the medium-term financial plan, mainly around the future government funding issues. So that's the general fund and the recommendation. So the next section I wish to cover is the housing revenue account. The HRA has a favourable outturn position of 3.594 million. The main reason for this is the underspend on planned maintenance. Obviously, the restrictions of the pandemic has impacted the capability to undertake these works. So in a similar way to the general fund, the HRA reserve balance is over and above the adopted range, the upper range being 3.1 million. So again, this sum over and above that has been set aside to specific reserves held for future expenditure. So the details of reserves held at year end can be found at paragraph 5.5 of the report. The final section I wish to cover was the capital programme outturn, and this is summarised from paragraph 6.1, and also there's a lot of detail included appendix 2. Capital spend in the year was again affected by the pandemic, with a total of 10.6 million being spent, but with an underspend of 9.5 million. And this slippage will be reprofiled into future years. That's all I wish to cover. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, John, for that. Can I come please to any members outside of Cabinet who would wish to ask any questions or make any comments on this agenda item 15? I can see no hands at the moment, in which case I'll come back into Cabinet, and I'm guessing I should start with Councillor Jack Rowland. Even before he got his yellow hand up.
No.
I could see you. I could see
Unbelievable, Chair. You can see me reaching. Thank you. Thank you, John. To start off with, I'd like to congratulate all the finance team. So it's been produced on the, especially on the general fund reserve, which is an understatement to say it's been one of the most challenging years. That's certainly true in terms of the finances of the council. To end up in this much better position than we anticipated earlier in the year is very pleasing and shows hard work and dedication to producing these results. I'd actually like to how's that? Well, thank you, Councillor Hayward, for disrupting my flow. I've totally forgotten where I was now. I don't know if that was in the script or not. Anyway, without further ado, can I actually formally move the 2 recommendations that are in the report? Because I think I covered all the thank yous and for the dedication shown.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, as I understand it, so I think the noise of your mic against your collar, you have to mark where there was that. I think that was causing to drop out the sky or something. So, okay. So now Jeff's he's indicating that I haven't got my list. I don't know. There's some pedantry here tonight. Right. Okay. Anybody else within Cabinet like to speak on that, or has Jack spoken for us all? In which case, I just also like to, if I may, second everything that Jack has said. I'd like to thank all of the finance team. This has been the most extraordinarily difficult year. It's reminded me of when Kirk and Spock used to play 3-dimensional chess. Do you remember that? And it's just kind of, oh my God, what's coming in next? So can we then go to a vote on this, please, Cabinet? We have 2 recommendations. The first is that we consider and recommend to Council the outturn position for 2021, including the implications and proposals relating to the balances and reserves held by the Council. And 2, the Cabinet recommends to Council that 0.806 million is transferred from the general fund balance to the medium-term financial plan risk reserve, and the general fund balance is then retained at 3.8 million, allowing for 122,000 to be used in 2021-22 in line with the approved budget, this being the upper end of the adopted range as detailed in 3.2 of the report. So can we go to a vote on that, please, everybody? Okay, thank you very much. I think that's unanimous as well. Have we got everybody in Cabinet has voted? Yes, I think so. Okay, thank you very much indeed. And thank you, John and team, again. So we now come to, happily, because we now seem to have a little bit more money, agenda item 16, the funding of an interim place and prosperity surveyor through the General Fund Asset Maintenance Reserve. And we have a report here from Mr. Tim Child, the Service Lead for Place Assets and Commercialisation. Over to you, please, Tim.
Thank you very much, Chair. So you've got a short report in front of you tonight, so I'll try and make my introduction to it equally short and brief. So this is about funding of an interim place and prosperity surveyor using the General Fund Asset Maintenance Reserve. So I have an operational need to retain an existing interim surveyor through to the end of April 2022. This appointment is supported operationally by SMT, but funding is required from the Asset Maintenance Reserve, and hence the report and the recommendations to Council, but the sum of £58,000 be made available from that reserve. In the report, I do give a flavour of the type of projects to be delivered, which will ultimately lead to a reduction in the maintenance costs attached to the portfolio, and therefore the appropriateness of using that particular reserve to fund this post. I said I'd be brief, that's really all I needed to say, but happy to take any questions.
Fantastic, Tim. Thank you very much. Very welcome. It looks pretty self-evident, this report. Would any members from outside of Cabinet wish to make any comment or ask any questions on those? I can't see anybody coming forward there. Cabinet, anybody wish to say anything at this stage? Or if not, can I seek a proposer and seconder, please? Councillor Nick Hookway.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Tim for this report. I think it's highly suitable, and I therefore like to propose the recommendation, please.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Megan Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, could Tim just repeat? I'm sorry, I just couldn't take that bit in about where the money's. I always wonder when we look at the budget and it says no, it's not in accordance with the budget. Can you just clarify that bit for me again? I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand where the money's coming from. Thank you.
Tim, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The proposal is that it will come from the asset maintenance reserve.
Right.
It's a maintenance reserve set aside for the general fund, so it is not the HRA, it's the general fund. Ultimately, a number of the key projects that this post will be delivering, and actually I've used some quite good examples there within the report itself. So Siege and Jurassic Beer Pilot, public conveniences, I think 3 good examples to explain that actually these 3 projects alone reduce the ongoing maintenance liability of the council, hence the appropriateness of that fund.
Okay.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Is that okay, Megan? Or
I think so. Yeah, I think that's
okay.
right. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's in the title of the item as well, isn't it? It's in the
Yeah,
general
I'm sorry, I'm not.
That's all right. No, it's always worth digging deeper. Why not?
Yeah.
Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm minded of the slogan of a well-known and fairly local to here German discount supermarket, which used to be, I think it was spend a little, get a lot, or live a lot. And I think we can use that, or at least plagiarise part of it, to say spend a little, do a lot. In the year that I've been in this role of economy and assets portfolio holder, working with Tim and his team and his colleagues, it's evident to me the things this council wants to do, needs to do, has to do. All that work is on the shoulders of relatively few member of staff who are working like Trojans. So I wholeheartedly support what Councillor Hookway has proposed. I'd like to second it, but also to have my personal thanks registered for Tim and all of his team in what they've done, and I hope what they will achieve with the addition of this extra person. And as Mr. Childs says, the savings that will be generated will actually, I would hope, I earnestly believe, will completely overwhelm the £58,000 we're proposing to spend now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. So we have a proposer in Councillor Hookway, a seconder in Councillor Hayward. Can we go to a vote, please, now? It's green ticks for yes and so forth. And I need to vote, don't I? That helps. There we go. So looking at that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's we now have 9 cabinet members present, and all 9 have voted in favour of that. So thank you very much indeed, and thank you, Tim. Right. So we now come to the next agenda item, which is the additional restrictions. No, it isn't. It's not. No, it's not. Sorry about that. I've lost my place. It's agenda item 17. We had a public speaker on it earlier. You may remember the consideration of the variance of the Exmouth ASB Public Spaces Protection Order 2020 to 2023. And I'm pretty certain, it's not in my script, that I think we have Dave here as an officer. Is that right? Who's going to speak on this? David Whelan?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Dave Whelan, Community Safety Coordinator for East Devon. I just wanted to, Chair, if you wanted me to pick up on the comments by Mr. Cathro, I can deal with those first.
Please do.
I've been in a long dialogue with the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office with regards to funding that was offered to ourselves, East Devon, to locally deal with the evening and nighttime economy for Exmouth going back to May of this year. Having tried to identify resources to put taxi marshals and evening nighttime economy patrols in place, unfortunately, we were unable to employ people from 3 local security companies. They are unable to actually manage their core bids in place of taking extra work. Unfortunately, that left us in a position where we had to turn down the funding from the Police and Crime Commissioner because we were unable to make use of it. However, as of yesterday afternoon, I was speaking with the Police and Crime Commissioner's office, and the PCC had made a decision that she would, by way of a special exception case for Exmouth, make that funding opportunity available for us to employ some daytime marshal delivery in Exmouth. So we had already started the ball rolling with regards to trying to put in place some daytime marshal delivery, and I identified a company who could deliver that on our behalf. The PCC's funding plus some COVID enforcement grants funding has allowed us to employ a patrolling pair who will be in uniform, and it's about welcome back and Exmouth recovery from the consequences of a pandemic, promoting responsible dog ownership, responsible alcohol consumption, consideration for other visitors, proper use of the public toilets bins, consideration of parking of vans and motorhomes, and remaining relevant as a reassurance to the public on the easement out of COVID and the reduction of community tension. I'm also meeting with the Community Safety Partnership police rep to discuss a number of issues, including the delivery of this role and other collaborative work tomorrow. So just wanted to make people aware of the fact that actually it wasn't that we weren't offered money, it was the fact that we couldn't initially employ from that fund that was set aside. The PCC has come back to us and has offered us a bid outside of her restrictions of what the funding was meant to be for. Chair.
Thank you, David, very much indeed. That's very welcome. And thanks to the Police and Crime Commissioner for that. And I note from your report that local partners, including Exmouth Town Council, have been consulted on what's being proposed here and are all supportive. So can I ask for any speakers from outside council? Here comes Exmouth. Let's start with Councillor Brewster Sarum, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of very quick points. Firstly, that Robert Cathro is one of our board members in Littleham, and I'm sure he's emailed both myself and Councillor Hookway with the issues that he's raised. So I didn't want him to get the impression that his ward councillors don't listen to him. We do listen to him, and obviously some of the things like the boy races that he touched on tonight, they are actually dealt with through the police or through the LAG group. And the camper vans, we have our own town camper van task force set up with Andrew Ennis is working with us to produce an outcome which hopefully we'll be able to announce in the next couple of months. And I know that there have been issues of drug use, as he says, but I'm pleased to see what Dave Whelan said tonight, that hopefully using those extra resources, things will get better. And the other point that I want to raise is that I must praise, I think, Councillor Cagle, I think he's on the call today. The Town Council, led by his initiative on CCTV, has actually made every effort to improve the CCTV, because as members will be aware, East Devon used to be responsible for the CCTV, but handed the responsibility off to the Town Council, and Councillor Cagle and a working party met, and over the last 18 months, 2 years, have been putting things together. So actually Exmouth will be a safer town, and I know Councillor Cagle will probably fill you in if you wish to know more about the fact that CCTV is coming to Exmouth, or is being upgraded to do this. So therefore concerns are there, and people, the council is listening to it, and I know that your town council will take action. So obviously those are just some of the points that I felt I should raise with you, and thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor de Sarum. Valuable contribution as ever. And I know you'll be enjoying making that remotely this evening. So let's come now to
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair.
Good, very good. It does work well, doesn't it? Councillor Paul Miller, please.
Thank you, Chair, very much. And I think, obviously, I speak on behalf of all Exmouth councillors to say that we welcome the extension of the antisocial behaviour order. But it's no silver bullet on its own. You know, we need resourcing, police resourcing. And over the last 10 years, since 2010, across the country, we've seen a third cut in neighbourhood policing, which we see is slowly coming back. And I want to thank Dave for his representations to the Police and Crime Commissioner and for securing some extra policing for Exmouth. But even with enforcement, it's still not a silver bullet. And in that press release that the Police and Crime Commissioner put out, she referred to funding to go on preventative measures, such as investment in sports clubs and youth clubs in our towns. And I think, you know, and I speak on behalf of my Exmouth colleagues that we would very much welcome that kind of investment, because that investment is what stops antisocial behaviour, because it gives young people, real things to do in their community. It prevents them from going down the beach and drinking large quantities of alcohol because they're so bored. And I think, I hope that we can, as a cabinet, and certainly I'll be doing so, making further representations to the Police and Crime Commissioner to try to get further funding for that, because that was mentioned in the press release. And I think it's that kind of funding really that means most to our communities. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. And I do agree with one of your key points there in particular. Sport is a very complex issue and must take care of itself to a certain extent. And there's an amount that we can do as East Devon. Youth services is Devon County issue, and it remains a very great concern, I believe, across the district that so many youth centres are now either not operating at all or operating on very restricted hours. So that point is very well made. Thank you very much. Can we come, please, next to Councillor Steve Gazzard?
Thank you, Chair. Can I first of all say thank you to Dave Whelan for the information he's given us tonight, and thank you for the funding that you've got from the Crime Commissioner. And I'm sure every bit of funding we can get has got to be extremely welcome. But I think one of the points that you made, Dave, was that it's going to be more of an educational device, this. As I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that prosecutions will be probably a last resort, because if we can educate the individuals, it's going to be a lot easier than trying to go through the courts. And I hear from what you were saying that you're going to have some. Did I hear that you're going to say you're going to have some marshals? Will that be East Devon marshals, or will that be local police officers during the day? But what will happen during the night time? Will there be funding for extra resources for police during the evening? And to be fair, I mean, we don't get antisocial behaviour. There are some places that are hotspots, but we don't get it every night. And Exmouth is a very safe place, I believe. But I welcome the initiative, and I just wonder whether you could answer my queries, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzard. Dave, are you happy to come back on that?
Yes. So there is marshals that have no enforcement powers that will be working through the day. We did look to cover that evening and nighttime economy, as I explained, and we were unable to recruit to cover that delivery. I'm not aware of the policing plan that is in place for daytime and evening work, but they do have a summer plan that is in place, and that will include not only the neighbourhood police but response, but also other resources that are available to assist with regards to the ease down. I can't answer any further than that. I may be in a better position having spoken to the Community Safety Partnership Police Rep tomorrow. Thanks, Councillor Gazzard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, very much indeed for that answer. Councillor Maddie Chapman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Nice to see everyone again. Just to say, I am on the CCTV committee, I have kept David Wellams informed of hotspots, because we do have them in Exmouth. I know we don't like talking about them, but we do have them. And I welcome the money for the marshals. Could David please confirm to me that the marshals will be able to contact officers should we have an influx of young visitors, which we had before, which kicked off on the beach? And obviously having the marshals around, we'll be able, I hope, to get hold of the police contact quite quickly. Is this correct? Have I got this right?
Dave, would you like to come back on that, please, to Councillor Chapman?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's one of the proposals. The team that we are looking for to be the marshals are ex-police officers in general, and myself, themselves, and the local neighbourhood team will have the contacts in place to ensure that they are linked into either the neighbourhood team if they are working, or if it's not, it will be the response team sergeant who is working that shift. So yeah, that's one of my main proposals, Councillor Chapman, is the fact that that linkage will be there, so it can allow for dynamic changes of deployments.
Thank you very much, Dave. And I'm sure the new CCTV that Councillor Cagle will have up and running, and I'm sure he'll tell you about it, will obviously assist in this. So it should be quite an exciting time if anyone wants to kick off in Exmouth. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Chapman. I think, yes, we're not encouraging people to kick off in Exmouth, though, are we? I think that's quite crucial to say. So even if we can video it now. So coming now back within Cabinet, can I go to Councillor John Loudon, please, first?
Thank you, Chair. You caught me mid-typing there, trying to send an email to yourself.
Would you like to come back in a moment? I can go.
No, not at all.
Please carry on.
Yep. What I was wanting to do is to move an additional recommendation to this report, because it does seem to me that in light of the representations that have been made to us this evening, so we've had officer reports, we've had an update from a member of the public, and we've also had updates from ward members about the situation in Exmouth. And it does seem to me that what everybody seems to be looking for is maximum funding in order to provide as many resources locally in Exmouth as possible. And it was sad actually to hear what Dave was saying about at one point we did have funding, but then we couldn't utilise it because the security firms weren't able to resource that. And that just does seem to play to everything we're hearing in the economy, not just here, but all around the country, about the shortage of people to do all sorts of work. But I'll move on. So my additional recommendation, which I'll finish typing in a minute to you, is in light of the verbal reports provided to this meeting, Cabinet agrees to ensure that continuing engagement with the PCC and others to secure maximum required funding is undertaken at both officer and member level. As I say, I'm happy to finish that in writing to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think to our officer, is it too unbearable to ask you to read that out one more time? I think just for everybody to catch it. It made a lot of sense to me, but if you could, please, John.
You're most kind, Chair, to tell me about how much sense it made. Right. Yeah. So it reads, in light of the verbal reports provided to this meeting, Cabinet agrees to ensure that continuing engagement with the PCC and others to secure maximum required funding is undertaken at both officer and member level.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Councillor Loudon, are you making a proposal for recommendation 1 and 2 that you just made as well?
Absolutely, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, let us
Can I
continue
ask
then.
Still send it through, Chair, if I may, because I'm afraid my writing is getting worse with all these virtual meetings and I can't keep up. So if you could send it through, please, that'd be great.
Yes, I haven't quite got it myself, but absolutely, thank you. I'm sure Councillor Loudon will be doing that right now. Thank you. So can we come to Councillor Nick Hookway, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm very grateful for all ward members and town council members, and also to Dave Whelan for his report for all and highlighting all these issues that we have. I'm also very grateful to Mr. Cathro, who I've had many conversations with over the last 2 years, and do share his concerns. The recommendations, I think, are very important. I think I particularly like recommendation 2, because we do have an issue on the seafront. During the daytime, the seafront is generally a very, very pleasant place, but it's after 6 o'clock that things start to get a little bit unruly, and we have quite a lot of boy racers doing some irresponsible things on the road. And we also have sometimes issues where individuals do tend to kick off because they are worse the wear for drink. And that's really the purpose behind this public space order. So I would I thank everybody. I wish Dave Whelan the best of success in his meeting next week with the PCC, and I would like to propose both recommendations, please. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hookway. That's seconding for Councillor Loudon, who has already proposed it. Thank you very much. Councillor Megan Armstrong, please.
Well, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to follow on from what Councillor Miller said earlier. It is a balancing act between enforcement and investment in support for not all of these people who are causing issues in Exmouth, but certainly some of the younger ones who may need to need some help. And I know as a previous youth worker that youth work and similar support services for young people are always the last on the list for local authorities. That we always call them the Cinderella service. And I think that really needs to be addressed, and that is something obviously that doesn't come within our district council's remit. But if that can be put forward by Dave at his meeting next week or in any other scenario, that would be good. So it's about enforcement. So I wanted to ask about what enforcement means, and it's been touched on earlier about the marshals and so on. But will these places actually be able to be enforced adequately? And what are the consequences for those who are accused of these antisocial behaviours? But aligned with that, equally aligned with that, is about investment for services to help those who may need help. And we're even talking about drug and alcohol help. You know, that's always last on the list as well, as far as I'm concerned. So it's just a request to Dave to be able to pass that on. And I'm sure it's been discussed before, but I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to follow on from Councillor Miller's comments earlier. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dave, can I come back to you briefly? I'm guessing you're on exactly the same page as Councillor Armstrong on what's just been said, but can I ask for you to comment, please?
Yes, so with regards to enforcement, I haven't got onto the public spaces protection order as yet, and the variants of the area, but the powers that are from enforcement from that are an £80 fine by way of the fixed penalty notice, or they could be as simple as a discussion and a talk with the individuals and moving them on depending on what they are doing. It could be removal of the drink the alcohol or the other intoxicating substances that they hold, and taken off them by the police. So that's what enforcement looks like. I'm very conscious of the lack of alcohol and drug intervention work that is in and around Exmouth. I am currently linking in with Together, who are the provider for drugs and alcohol outreach work. Unfortunately, the representative for Exeter East and Mid Devon is currently on maternity leave. There is a temporary person that was in place. They've now moved on, and I'm in the process of speaking to the second interim person. So that is one of my things that I'm trying to work through in my role as the community safety coordinator to get drugs and alcohol outreach into Exmouth.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Megan, as well. You have quite rightly mentioned, Dave, that in our enthusiasm to back this, did I cut you off in your prime before you actually got into the detail of the areas there? Because very happy to come back to you on that.
I was going to deal with this because I thought it was a simpler matter just to deal with it in isolation, because it was relevant to some funding around marshals that although they will be in the footprints that we're talking about, aren't dependent on the implementation of the public spaces protection order. But if I see that there are still two other members who would like to make comment, and I'll just give it to you, Chair, whether you want them to make comment or I'll continue on with the rest of the report.
No, if you continue on, please, Dave, and then we'll come to Jeff and Jack in a minute. So after you, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the report that you've got in front of you is on the back of the report that came and requested for us to go to public consultation to vary the footprint of the antisocial behaviour public spaces protection order that currently is in place in the centre of town. So it's an urgent implementation because we'd like to have it in place for the summer of this year, and that's a legal process. We've done some equalities impact around it, and due to the demographics of Exmouth and the visitors to Exmouth, this is likely to impact on young white males in the majority, and it's considered low impact. Moving on to the recommendations, to the report. Basically, Cabinet resolved that we could go to public consultation. The Public Spaces Protection Order that is set out under the Antisocial Behaviour Act 2014, for this particular order would cover possessing intoxicating substances, including alcohol, urination and defecation within a street or public place, aggressive requests for money, intimidation, harassment, alarm or distress, and dispersal of groups who are causing intimidation, harassment, alarm or distress. So the public consultation went live on the 17th of May of this year, including some radio campaigns with Councillor Hookway on Radio Devon, a social media campaign which went out every week, and on the highest of those occasions we reached 16,000 accounts from Twitter, 2,000 accounts from Facebook, and Instagram, which is the lowest number, was 600 over the whole campaign. When we look at the hits on the EDDC website, we had 130 unique visitors to the consultation, and that generated 50 emails, 37 which were supportive, so that's approximately 95%, and 2 were against. Those were also backed up with 11 who made other linked inquiries. Of the 37 supportive emails, there were significant recommendations that were made about law enforcers needing to be briefed properly, getting the PSPO in place as soon as possible, and recognising the need to deal with the ASB by this order. There were other locations that were wanted to be considered, such as Fear Park. I felt that sat outside of the area and the considerations for the reason for making the variance. But there were other locations which were identified, including Sandy Bay, Victoria and Andrews Road, the Geo Needle and the public space at the top of the zigzag paths, which will be very well known to Mr. Cathro. And then further recommendations that were already within the report around including the Half Moon Field, which is a field in the north along the estuary, and some stuff around barbecue areas on the beaches, which links in with the fire aspect, which we saw all of last year. So if I move on, I then, at the beginning of June, during the half term, I put out 60 temporary posters around the perimeter of that footprint, and I spoke to a number of individuals who were either visiting or were local individuals inquiring and being positive about the Public Spaces Protection Order. So we also have been supported by all of the usual statutory partners, so the police BCU commander, Chief Superintendent Dan Evans, the local neighbourhood team who will be the ones that will be implementing this in the majority, the Police and Crime Commissioner who asked how EDDC could consider how its office can support the PSPO. So that's the sort of things that's within our skill set around the clearing away of the littering and the defecation that we see from street scene, as well as the dog sort of antisocial behaviour. So Exmouth Town Council, Sandy Bay were also consulted, very supportive. The National Trust, who are landowners on the top of Higher Orcombe and around Orcombe Point, they were very supportive. Exmouth Town Council been very supportive, met with Councillor Miller down on the front just to talk around the issues that were being seen on the beach. We had good input from the Exmouth Community Association making recommendations about some wording on the order. Obviously yourselves from the District Council and my other colleagues from other departments who feel that there's a need for the Public Spaces Protection Order, and then Highways from Devon County Council and the current county councillors who are in place, who have coverage for Exmouth. So as I've outlined, this is a full and varied public consultation and gave individuals the opportunity to pass comment if they wished over that 5-week period. I responded to every single email that was submitted, even the less positive ones, and outlined the reasons why we were going with things. So there are no challenges regarding the proposal for location, and in fact there were recommendations as to an extension of the existing PSPO, which made sense, very proportionate and pragmatic around Victoria Road and St Andrews, and then some more of the land, although it had been considered at Higher Orcombe around the Geo Needle, there was more detail that was added. So as we move through it, there are other changes suggested for future consideration as part of the Antisocial Behaviour Public Space Protection Order, but that's for a future date. This was about getting something that was urgently in place to deal with the antisocial behaviour that was fuelled by alcohol that we have seen over the last two years or two full years of ASB on the beaches. So this is a map that I have put together myself, and moving those red lines around on the map is a difficult thing to do, but it covers an area that I believe covers where we like to see antisocial behaviour, and then also the displacement that comes through. And there are 5 or 6 maps that are attached, covering from the Half Moon Field in the north, the estuary cycle route, Carter Avenue Marine Way as you come south, back through the town centre and the Imperial Recreation Ground, the train station, Exmouth Marina, round the beach and to the Esplanade. And then you then continue along through the Mare, the beach, Queen's Drive, Mare, Foxholes car parks, the Donkey Field in Foxholes, and the zigzag path up to Foxholes Hill. As we move through then onto Exmouth, the Orcombe Point, the area around the Geo Needle, the Highland of Orcombe and the beach at Sandy Bay. Obviously, there are different land ownerships. So I look to have the review for this in May 2023, not extending it to a full 3 years, but it gives us that opportunity to review it at the earliest opportunity. And in the period that we're talking about, there have been 372 incidents of antisocial behaviour in the year up to the 31st of March 2021. The police outlined the fact that on Saturday, the 12th of June, we saw a further incident where 100 drunken youths were seen causing disturbance on the beach, and the PSPO, if it had been in place, would have been able to be utilised. So the recommendation is that Cabinet resolve to vary the Exmouth Antisocial Behaviour Public Spaces Protection Order 2020 to 2023 to cover the area of land shown on the plans in paragraph 18 of the report, which includes the 2 additional areas of land identified in the paragraph 16 of the report, to be effective for this summer with a future review date of May 2023. The Chair, back to you.
Lovely. Thank you, Dave, very much for that comprehensive presentation of the report. So we have the 2 recommendations now, and we've had recommendation 2 read out already as well. So Cabinet, can I ask you please to, oh no, we've got other speakers on this. I'm terribly sorry. Councillor Young?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say thank you to David for the report. Just to emphasise that Exmouth is a very pleasant family resort, and these are very small issues that happen usually in the evenings. I have family in Exmouth, and they tell me there's hardly any problems, but I'm aware of issues like the dog walking, issues of antisocial behaviour with some water sports, also on antisocial parking, doing wigglies on the roads, etc. These are all very difficult things to do, but this is definitely a step in the right direction, and onwards and upwards. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor, I've got Councillor Armstrong. Is that an old hand there? It's a new hand. Okay, Councillor Armstrong, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's only a very quick one. I'm just looking at the maps, and I just wanted to check, and Dave may or may not remember, we had an issue with antisocial behaviour and drinking and so on, especially late at night in my ward. So I'm just, is the Half Moon Field the bit that goes up towards the Lower Halston Farm on the left-hand side of the, as you're walking up there, on the left-hand side of the railway line? Is that the Half Moon Field? And that's where we had do you remember we had issues up there before?
Councillor Armstrong, Chair, yes, that is the land that's owned by the National Trust that's leased by the Lower Halston Farm, and it is that pocket of land that sits on the outside of the railway track onto the estuary.
Well, that will certainly please the residents who live nearby, especially the bungalows, the older residents there, because I know they were very upset at the time when that happened. So yes, thank you. I just wanted to check that was the same place. Thanks very much. Thanks,
Thank
Chair.
you very much. Councillor Jack Rowland, please.
Thanks, Chair. I fully support the recommendation 1 and the addition of recommendation 2, but I wanted to talk specifically about a subject that Mr. Cathro mentioned in the public speaking slot. Although it's not specifically under the remit of this council, he was talking about the issue of antisocial driving, which I know is an issue not just in Exmouth but in many towns within the district. And I know that from being a police volunteer and a member of a Speedwatch team, because that's a subject that perennially gets mentioned or we pick up on. I know Mr. Cathro mentioned that he's got a meeting soon with a number of representatives, including the police, and I've heard about CCTV hopefully being installed, and hopefully it'll be in those areas where often this antisocial driving is taking place, because if there is evidence that can be brought to the attention of the police, that's obviously going to help, because as an extreme, the police can take action to impound vehicles if there's sufficient evidence to support that. So I hope that CCTV will be covering those areas that no doubt are always the hotspots that are covered by this particular subject. And also I would encourage Mr. Cathro to encourage members of the public, if they do witness anything like this, to also, if they can, because it quite often happens late at night, to be taking a note of the registration numbers and also reporting that through to the police. Because the more times they get the same registration being reported, the greater the chances of action being taken. Thank you.
You're on mute.
It's been helpfully pointed out to me that that last bit was a mime act and I was on mute. So we have the two recommendations. And so can we now please go to a vote on those by means of the green ticks and the red crosses and so forth? Okay, thank you very much. That's unanimous. That's 9 of the members of Cabinet present. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Dave Whelan, for an excellent and comprehensive report and in depth, and for your ongoing work on this and indeed liaison across all the communities involved. And good luck in future trying to get even more resources together for this. Thank you. We now move on to, thank you, Dave, agenda item 18, additional restriction grant. It says on my scripture report from Rob Murray and Andy Wood. I'm guessing it's Rob Murray. Rob, is it you?
That's correct. Thank you, Chair.
Over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Cabinet have received a number of reports on the delivery of our ARG, or Additional Restrictions Grant Programme, most recently on the 5th of May. This focused on options for deploying the balance of the ARG funds before the revised government deadline of the 30th of June. Now, this was on the basis that further top-up funding of 1.14 million might then be secured. Through a concerted effort, our spend programme was successful, with all of our £4.2 million of existing ARG funds committed ahead of the deadline, along with a modest overspend, currently sitting at just over 58,000 in supporting the last few eligible local businesses across the line. This report therefore recommends that to meet this, up to £100,000 is made available from the 1.14 million top-up award, which we've now met the requirement to receive. This will still mean that at least 1.04 million is available for the Adaptation, Innovation and Resilience Fund, to be matched by £1 million of council funds. That concludes the report request. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Rob. Admirably and welcomely brief at this stage. Thank you very much indeed for that. Members, do we have any questions on this subject? Councillor Bruce Tesseram.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be very, very brief, I'd like to thank the team for their sympathetic support that was provided to the Cranford Club during this time. And I know that they spoke at council a few months back, and they've been we have been as a council very supportive. So I just wanted to pass on my grateful thanks as one of the ward members for the support the club has received in keeping with the desire to have sports and leisure at the top of our priorities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Tesseram. There are no other speakers from outside of Cabinet, so can I come first to Councillor Paul Hayward, please?
Thank you, Chair. With all due deference to you, I think Councillor Rowland might have picked me to the post in order, but if you've called me...
I was mixing it up a bit. I thought this is your portfolio, Councillor Hayward. I'm letting you go first. Go on then.
Well, thank you very much. Well, without stealing Councillor Rowland's thunder, yeah, I mean, I'm be delighted to just propose this recommendation. It was discussed by the ARG panel, and it sort of echoes where we got to. I mean, we had numerous meetings, and I will again echo what Councillor Tesseram said, that I thank the officers for all their assistance. The members of the ARG panel from across all sides of the council who met frequently, I thank them for their time, their good humour, their effort, their attendance, and the fact that we had to contend with almost daily changes. That's probably a bit over dramatic, weekly changes from days as to how we could dispense this money. And with officers' help and guidance, we managed it. And in essence, what you're having here is almost the testament of what we achieved. We spent the money that was given to us, and actually we were a little bit over generous. We went a bit too far, but I don't think that's anyone's fault. We did what we could. The guidance changed, and of course, we sought to help as many people as possible. There were late applications. And in fact, there'll be another application coming to member of the ARG panel very shortly by email that we feel we can help with. But that will be incorporated within this £100,000 variation. So I hope Councillor Rowland will forgive me for speaking first, but I'd like to propose that we accept this recommendation wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. And if I may, at the risk of making you blush, can I thank Councillor Hayward too for his work chairing these various committees? And as he has said, the officers deserve a huge amount of credit. I don't think I've ever known the ground move under a group of people so often as over the last year and a half or so in relation to these grants, how they're coming forward. And then eventually this almost wonderful trick where we had to spend a certain amount to be able to get more as well. And that was a very fine balancing act. And Rob and his team have done a brilliant job. So thank you. Councillor Jack Rowland, please.
Well,
that's if I've left him anything left to say. I'm sorry, Jack.
Between Councillor Hayward and yourself, I mean, you've said everything that I was going to say. I will say, as a member of the panel, I would like to echo the thanks to Rob Murray and Andrew Wood and everybody else within those teams, because it has been shifting sand with deadlines constantly cropping up on this subject. So to be in the position we are is really pleasing. So I take pleasure in actually seconding the recommendation that's been made.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. So we have no other speakers on this. So can we just go straight to the vote on the recommendation that Cabinet agreed to making up to £100,000 available from the top-up additional restrictions grant award to fund applications received through the latest application round. Green ticks for yes, please. Red crosses for no. And we have 9 votes. That's unanimous of those present in the room. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Andy and teams. So we now come to our next agenda item 19, taking forward the Council's communication ambitions. And we have a report here from our Chief Executive Officer, Mark Williams. Over to you, please, Mark.
Thank you. So if we didn't know it before, I think the experience of the pandemic and the lockdown has emphasised the importance of the Council's communications function, and that includes our website capability and capacity to facilitate online transactions and all the things that people expect, if you like, of a modern website. So this report is requesting additional capacity within the communications team, and you can see at the end of the report it's summarised in terms of a digital lead and a digital transformation project officer, and the request for the capacity will be met in part from the transformation fund, but there is an annual ongoing budget request of £20,000 in respect to the digital lead. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Mark, do we have any questions from anybody from outside Cabinet? Councillor Paul Miller, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mark, for the report. Just a question on an area I don't have much expertise on, which is the website, and obviously I understand that there's going to be some the new roles are going to be looking at the updating the transaction side of the website. Will there be more of a wholesale review of the website? And I just sort of speaking on behalf of residents who have contacted me over the past, since becoming an elected member, there are a lot of pages on the website that have broken links and things like that. Is a more wholesale review of the website something that these new post holders will be able to do as part of the role, or is that a bit too ambitious to ask for? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Mark, can you help us with that one, please?
So the hope is that by having adequate capacity in place, we'll get to a position where we can adopt a phased improvement to the website. It's a slight sort of chicken and egg situation that we're in at the moment, and that's sort of having the expertise in-house to identify where effort across the council, not just specifically within the communications function, but where effort across the council can best be targeted to make sure that the overall experience is improved. So I would see this as a vital first step in ensuring that the sorts of things residents are concerned about can be addressed.
Thank you, Mark. Can I come to Councillor Sarah Jackson, within whose portfolio these issues sit, and she has a great deal of expertise on it. Sarah, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd firstly like to take the opportunity to thank the communications team, who have been, quite frankly, outstanding over the last 18 months or so. They've basically continued to do the normal communications function of the council, plus the additional upswing in communications around the COVID pandemic, which is no mean feat by any stretch of the imagination, but they've also been doing so with a couple of vacant positions, which you'll see in that report, which are separate to the roles that are being requested in this report. So I would like to extend thanks to Mark Williams as well for taking the bull by the horns in this respect and getting our communications team back to a resourcing level that would mean that they can act in the most efficient and forward-thinking manner, and also to the officers that have fed into this report to help basically design a team that will have a better level of resilience and able to communicate most effectively with our residents, who we have a duty to ensure get the appropriate level of information at all times. I do have just one query, which I perhaps should have picked up before, but I haven't had an opportunity to, regarding the process on this one, and that one regards to the approval of this, if Cabinet are minded to accept those recommendations for those additional posts. I understand from the report that the budget would be met by the transformation budget and it fulfills those criteria. So I just wanted to check whether or not this does need to go to council for finalisation, or whether this is the team can move forward from this point if approved by Cabinet tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Mark, please.
So the two aspects that will need the formal council approval, as I understand it, are the two posts that are referred to in the summary. But in the hope or expectation that the council meeting also takes place this month, hopefully the delay will be a short one.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Sarah, would you like to, have you got anything else you'd like to add after that, or are you happy to move on to the next speaker?
No, I don't think so. I think I was just looking for clarification about whether those two additional posts could be approved tonight, or whether they needed to go to council. So thank you to Mark for that one. And I just would hope that my Cabinet colleagues will find, because I can't vote myself tonight because I'm not present in the room, will find favour in this report and vote it through. Thank you.
Sarah, can I impersonally ask about your recent medical history? How many jabs have you had so far in relation to COVID-19?
Just the one at the end of June, And I think I've had a letter today inviting me to come for my second vaccination a week earlier than planned, which was at the end of August.
Very good. I hope that note is taken of that across the chamber. Councillor John Loudon, please.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think Councillor Jackson's able to move this, so I'm very happy to do so on her behalf. But I would also like to ask a question, and I suspect it probably goes to Mark. At page 123, where we're talking about the two comms officers, we've got the digital lead, then it talks about it being an industrial placement student. Would I be right in thinking this would be a student in following a course of study, and therefore they have a time out from their study to come and work with us, and then they go back into study? Just a basic clarification, because I don't know what an industrial placement student is, other than guessing it's not an apprentice, is it?
It's not an apprentice. It's not an apprentice. Arguably, it's Andrew Hopkins' Baldrick style cunning plan. But Andrew can tell you more about it. But certainly when Andrew was dealing with comms for Bridgewater Council, I think it was, or Sedgemoor, they managed to establish very good links with the local tech college. So in fact, the student would spend a whole year out as part of their sort of degree course with the organisation. And what Andrew's experience was that they were highly motivated, highly skilled, and highly productive. And what we'd be looking to do is to facilitate a similar arrangement with an education establishment near to us.
Thanks, Mark. But Councillor Loudon will continue to refer to them as industrial placement students rather than Baldricks, I think, probably for the purposes of the advertisement. Thank you. Okay, so we have Councillor Megan Armstrong, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah. My usual boring question is, and you've probably got the answer, I'm sure you'll have the answer. When I look at budget and it's not budget at 4, I just have to ask that question, even though it might be in the report. I just want real clarification about that, and the transformation fund and how much there is in it and all of that. And I'm sorry if I've missed it in the report, but I couldn't see it anywhere. But also I was going to ask about the industrial placement student, so that's been done. So the 20,000, would that be an ongoing amount? It's not just for 1 year. These would be permanent posts, would they? I just want to check that. So
Mark,
we're talking.
Oh, sorry, Megan.
Yeah, shall I just finish and then?
Yes, sorry, I thought you had. Sorry.
So 20,000 for one post, and then 37 for the second one. So that's 57,000 per annum. So are they both permanent posts, and would they be ongoing? So if we agree this tonight and or at council, there's no going back, basically. I suppose that's what I'm trying to find out. So it's an ongoing cost. And do those amounts include on costs? Because that's even more. And I just wanted to ask about the 2 vacant positions at the moment. And are they going to be filled? Are they being advertised, or what's happening to those? And when those posts are filled, could those posts include any of the duties of these new posts? And I'm sure all that's been thought about, but I just felt I have to ask all those questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mark, as much as you'd like to cover of that, please feel free.
If you have a look at the bottom of page 124 in the report, you'll see that there's an annual budget of 20,000. So that is an ongoing cost, for so long.
That's what I've been looking at. Yeah.
So we can find, assuming we can find a student, so that will be an ongoing cost. But the digital transformation project officer is a 2-year term. So we've bundled that up into the 74,000 costs, which includes on costs, as I understand it, and that's the request to be met from the transformation fund. So that's a discrete cost, which won't be an annual cost. It'll be taken out of the fund. The vacant posts, the reason, well, they're vacant because we've been out to advert and we sought to fill them. And what we've found, in fact, was that arguably the job design didn't mean that we were able to get the best candidate, in the sense that the job design was a bit confused. So it was based on our experience of someone who was in post beforehand and the way that that job evolved. But actually, that job evolved because of the particular abilities of that individual. Having gone out to the market and seen that there was definite confusion on the part of applicants into what was the core elements of the job that we were seeking. That's why we've sort of redesigned them. So what you see here is a sort of the redesign of those two jobs. Assuming that's approved, then to say I hope we can confidently go out to recruit on the basis of we're much clearer about the discrete areas of expertise that we're after.
So sorry, Chair, can I just come back on that?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So sorry, I'm obviously being very slow and thick tonight, more than usual, you might say. But so those two currently vacant posts, they will be filled. Is that the intention? Or yeah, I'm looking at Andrew. Andrew's nodding. Yeah. So they will be filled. And the final $1 million question is Simon happy about all this, or does he just have to take his orders? That's very cheeky. Perhaps he hasn't got a choice.
Megan, can I just say, without embarrassing CEO here, I think you can absolutely assume this has already been put past our S151 officer.
Yeah,
I think
I just want to check for the record, please, if that's all right.
I think I'm happy for me to say I'm certain it will have gone past S151.
Okay.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Can we come to Councillor Sarah Jackson? Coming back to Councillor Jackson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reassure Councillor Armstrong. I had quite in-depth conversations with Mark and members of the communications team about the proposal for the structure of the communications team. And it's an industry that I come from, so I have a fair amount of professional experience in it as well. And there's certainly very, very specific skill sets under each of these roles. And I'm not remotely surprised that we've had issues in the past filling the roles that are currently vacant based on what they looked like previously and what's actually out there, and those disciplines that are kind of the specialisms of those who work within these industries and these skill sets. So I'm really confident that this is a good approach for now. I also recognise that we don't know, the expertise of those that we do end up taking on, and we could find that, they may need to be a bit of a reshuffle where someone's got talents in something that we weren't expecting. So it may be that gaps appear, and it may be that we fill gaps that we weren't expecting to fill. So it's going to be a little bit of an evolution, I would imagine. But I have every confidence that the CEO and the comms team will be assessing this on an ongoing basis anyway.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Okay, so Dan Ledger, Councillor Dan Ledger, please.
Thank you, Chair. Really happy just to second this. Andrew and the rest of the comms team have been overstretched for way too long now. They've been absolute superstars as officers to work with, but they are overstretched and this new structure is needed. So I'm happy to second it. Let's get the post filled. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ledger. And that triggers us. Let's go to the vote on that now, please. Members of Cabinet, green, tick, red cross, and so forth. And that's unanimous of everyone present. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you to Mr. Williams for the report and the actions that are contained in it. Excellent. Welcome progress on that. We now come to agenda item 20, the former Millway Rise football pitches in Axminster. And I have lost my place in my script, but I'm guessing we'll have a report from John Golding, who is our strategic lead for housing, health and environment. I found my script, and yes, that's exactly who we're having. John, please.
Thank you, Chair. If I may just briefly introduce the report. So this report sets out future ambitions for a former football pitch at Millway Rise in Axminster. There's been some interest and questions around the use of the site since it was vacated some years ago. So I thought it might be useful to capture some thoughts and stimulate discussion on the future use of the site. As members will know, the site is adjacent to a council housing estate and is designated as housing revenue account land. And I should clarify in terms of the report that the former football club that occupied the site, I'm informed, is now very operational and at Cloakham Lawns. This is a significant piece of housing land, probably the last significant developable piece of land that we have in our housing portfolio. And you can see from the report that we have produced some potential development ideas for the site. Some years ago this was, and further feasibility work is required. As you can see from the report, there are a whole series of planning constraints that need to be overcome before any residential development can be progressed. And we need to consider the ageing community centre, a very well used and valued community centre that's on an adjacent site, and indeed the allotments that you can see on the plan. A considerable amount of affordable housing has been delivered in Axminster over recent years, which is one of the reasons why we haven't brought this forward for development previously. A development brief will need to be produced for the site prior to any development, incorporating the community elements that I've mentioned, and hopefully members agree the suggested uses of the site being primarily housing and associated community uses, but all subject, of course, to planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that report, John. Can I look for any speakers, please, from outside of Cabinet? Councillor Andrew Moulding, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, John, for your report. And firstly, I must, of course, declare my interests as Cloakham Lawns Sports Centre, where I'm president, is mentioned in the report, and so is Axminster Skate Park, where I'm a trustee. And I am pleased, very pleased to see this report. Millway Rise Football Club relocated to Cloakham Lawns probably about 10 years ago now. And during that 10 years, I've been speaking to a number of people, particularly Paul Lowe, when he was working for the council, to ascertain what the future intentions were for this very important site for East Devon District Council. And as John rightly said, there were some clarifications in the report. On page 128, it said that Millway Rise Football Club had disbanded. Certainly they haven't. They have two sides, a first team, a second team, and about anything between 60 and 100 young people playing in youth teams. So they're far from disbanded. And as for amalgamation with Axminster Town Football Club, well, it's ne'er the twain shall meet, like Manchester City and Manchester United. So they would never get together. So they certainly haven't amalgamated. Also, just for clarification, on the page 129, I think it is, under 3.1, it mentions the strip of land between the site and the Axminster Cemetery. That land is actually owned by Axminster Town Council, and so is not under the ownership of East Devon District Council. I've been, like I say, talking to housing about possible uses for this land, and particularly now, looking at the level of housing need for Axminster, I think we ought to do something on a fairly urgent basis. Obviously, there is some discussion to take place with Sport England about the potential loss of sport and recreation land. But as Millway Rise relocated to Axminster Cloakham Lawn Sports Centre, they play on what we call Harry's Field, where there are 2 football pitches, a senior football pitch for the senior teams for Millway Rise and a junior football pitch for the youth players. So it may well be that we can ascertain with Sport England that the loss of recreational land at Millway Rise Football Club on the First Avenue site is replaced by additional football facilities either at Cloakham or at Axminster Town Football Club, where they've developed 2 football pitches. So that may well be the case. And I've looked at the 4 options that are set out for us, and I'm particularly concerned regarding the removal of the community centre, and John Golding mentioned it. It is very well loved, and indeed, the community hall is not in good condition. It would urgently need a replacement. It can't be refurbished. And it is vital for the residents of the Millway Rise estate, one of the largest community conurbations in East Devon. And indeed, there is a community group that have raised funds. I think it's in the order of £10,000 on a bank account to assist with the provision of a new hall. I did notice on option, I think it was option D or option 4, I can't remember now, but I did notice on the 4th option that there was a site for a community hall, and the other 3 options, there's no community hall shown at all. Neither are there any allotments, and the site in question has been shown in the options as a site for anything up to 50 social houses or whatever, and we'd all want those social housing, but the residents not only of this site but of the whole of Millway Rise are large users of the existing allotment site, and we daren't lose that allotment site. That's the only site they've got for the residents of Millway Rise. So as I say, Chair, I welcome the report. It's well overdue, but I must make a plea for the allotments and the community hall. I think that has been made by the community officer, who I think sent a note in to John saying that she was concerned about the loss of the community hall, and I hope those positions will be very much taken into account. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Moulding. I'll come to other more knowledgeable members in a minute. And I think, because John, I think, felt bound to keep his introduction to this report quite brief. But just to make it clear, when you say options, what Councillor Moulding is referring to is the sketch plans that have been appended to the report, and those come from 2017, from 4 years ago. So that would have been back when his administration was in, and they are there, as far as I'm concerned, and I have said this to the officers, as illustrative of past discussions. They're not what we're moving forward with at all. Anything that comes forward in future has completely blue sky thinking on this. I also think it's important to point out that as cabinet members and officers involved in this, and members involved in this, we have specifically said that we must be minded of the obligations of Axminster Town Council, not less to provide allotments. Absolutely right, and that would have to be taken into account. I mean, Councillor Moulding, can I just ask you a direct question, if possible? Am I to assume now that you are, I think you and Councillor Law were quite keen to move the skate park to this spot at one point, weren't you? But that's now a thing of the past for you, presumably.
Yes, I think we've had some very amenable discussions with members of the town council, with other district councillors, both Councillor Jackson and the Councillor Hayward, looking at the possibilities for the skate park to remain on its existing site, but with recommendations. Indeed, Dave Whelan, who spoke with us earlier, he visited the site together with a police sergeant, and they all looked at the site in question, and they felt with CCTV, with opening up the site so that it wasn't so secluded, we could retain that as the site for the potential skate park. And I hope that further discussions will lead in that direction.
Very good. Now that's my understanding as well. And I think that's good, because I think the confusion over that for some years has probably put this project back. But I'll come now to Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. Really, it's just reiterating what Councillor Moulding has already covered. I suppose the two key elements in this report, and both were touched on by Councillor Moulding. The first is that there is significant housing need in Axminster. 410 applicants, paragraph 4.1 in May 2021, of which 87 are in bands B and C. So immediately there are 87 applicants in dire, desperate housing need. And then at the beginning of the report, a great report by Mr. Golding, is that this is the last significant piece of housing land. And so we should retain the land for affordable social housing development. But beyond that, and the Cabinet has discussed this, and I've had discussions with Councillor Jackson and Councillor Hall and Moulding and Councillor Ledger, essentially, we just need to get a move on. We need to get a move on. It's no use just talking about delivering social housing. We know that the housing market is broken. Just building more and more estates of private housing and calling them affordable doesn't make them affordable. You know, and I've just moved into one myself, and I'm very lucky now to have a house I can call my own. I only own half of it, and it's an affordable house. It's an astronomical cost. You know, in real terms, go back 50 years, there's no way you would call that affordable. But that's where we are. So, but this is a progression into social housing. We know we can do it. Other districts have done it. Other authorities have done it. So we should crack ahead. Yes, we do have an obligation. And as a clerk, I know the rules on allotment provision, but that's not insurmountable. And ultimately, from an ethical point of view, as much as I subscribe to the view that everyone should be able to grow turnips and grow carrots and grow sweet peas, is that more important than people having security of tenure and a roof over their heads and not being caught in the rent poverty trap? I don't believe it is. I believe they're both equally important things, but when push comes to shove, someone having a roof over their head in a house that's well built, eco-built, efficient and affordable is more important, and therefore full steam ahead as far as I'm concerned. So I thank Mr. Golding for this report, and I would urge Cabinet to go forward with these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Just to speak in defence of turnips for a moment, I'm sure I'm pretty certain Axminster Town Council has a legal obligation, doesn't it, to protect its allotments. So I think anything on this would look to the welfare of the turnips and indeed the Swedes and the cabbages, just to make that clear from this administration's point of view. Councillor Sarah Jackson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I am also very much in favour of allotments. I think they are great for health and well-being. I think probably the pandemic's given us an opportunity to really recognise that. I know a lot of people were spending a lot more time on their allotments, and certainly there was more interest in booking allotments during the pandemic from conversations with various other individuals. So I think it's really important that if the allotments can't be provided on this site, we find alternate provision and work with the town council to ensure there is somewhere for those to go, which is appropriate. And finding an appropriate spot for allotments is not always an easy task because it has to be the right land. So I do think there's discussions to be had, but I also recommend the need for these sorts of social and affordable housing that is truly affordable, not affordable in the generic nationally prescribed terms, which I don't actually believe is. And I also believe that the community centre that's currently in position needs to be desperately replaced. That is a used provision. I think actually if it was in better condition, it would probably be used more. So we do have an obligation, I think, to make sure that that's put back in place. But I do also recognise that these plans are indicative. They're not prescriptive of what is to come forward. They're just what has been discussed in the past. And I think now things have moved on and we can start looking at what that plan might actually look like and deliver the best outcome for residents in Axminster. But I do also very much value the report by Mr. Golding because I think it allows us to put a stake in the ground and say, look, we recognise that there is a real need here for this type of housing, that we have a waiting list, and that this is one of the steps to achieving a solution. We just now need to work out how we do that. But by bringing this forward and recognising this report, we're saying this is what we want to use this site for. And I think that clears up a lot of confusion that we've seen in the press, in the general public around this site previously when there's been discussions around skate parks and all sorts of other things, because I don't think we've ever actually sat down and said, this is what we want this site to be in the long term. And I think this is a good opportunity to say, we recognise where the need is and this is what we want to achieve long term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jackson. Members, just to reassure you, those who are feeling under pressure, so to speak, that after this item, we will take a 10-minute comfort break. So if you can just cross your legs for a little while longer, we're nearly there. So coming next, please, and can I ask you all to keep your contributions brief, if you were so kind. Councillor Rowland, please.
Sorry, Chair, I was desperately trying to unmute my microphone then. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points, mainly because I was invited to a site visit earlier this year when there were still discussions about whether this was an appropriate site for the skate park. And having asked Councillor Moulding and Councillor Hall for a lot of the background around this site, which they very kindly provided to me, that did engender a discussion about the future of this site. So I'm really pleased that Cloakham Lawns has been the more relevant site chosen for the skate park, and I really hope that does materialise there. And I'm equally as pleased, and thanks to John for this report, because I think this is such a prime site where social housing is an ideal place for it to be sited because of its location and the need. So I'm really pleased that this has come to this cabinet meeting tonight, and to use the phrase that Councillor Jackson used, it's putting a stake in the ground. I'd like to see more than a stake being put in the ground, but it's a start as to what can be provided here.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Oh, sorry. The other point I just meant to mention as well, that hopefully as well, we're going to have the playing pitch strategy reports in the not too distant future, which will also help cement the fact that this can be used for housing as well, where it is currently designated as playing pitch.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowland. Just to remind members that the recommendation is quite a simple one, that the housing land at Bilmoy Rise is reserved for affordable social housing development subject to planning permission. Councillor Armstrong, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll try and be quick. Thank you, John, for this report. Before anybody else does it, I'd like to propose a recommendation. I don't think anybody else has done that yet. But I just wanted to say that I know this has been on the boil, I think, since before I became a portfolio holder. And I was always told by officers 2 or 3 years ago that there wasn't an overriding need for social housing in Axminster at the time, because if I remember rightly, we were told that various housing associations were providing the relevant housing. Now, obviously, with these latest figures, that has changed. I can see that there's a real need for social housing, and I say social and not affordable, social housing in Axminster, and I would really support this. But I would also like to keep the allotments, because I think that's really, really important. I think, as Sarah said, you know, we need that as well for people, for the health and well-being. But what I would like to see is, if this land is used for housing, I wouldn't like to see a developer going in there and just giving us, what, 15, 10 social houses. I would like that land, if at all possible. I have no idea what the process is for this, really. I'm looking at various people in the room, so advise me. For it just to, I'd love for us to be able to build all those houses as social houses, and not to have any private, not to have any affordable, I don't think, unless it's argued somebody who's better qualified than me says, yes, we need them. But I really feel that that land, if it's set aside for housing, for the people on our housing list, they should all be social housing. And I wouldn't want to see any private developers in there. Now, as I say, I'm not sure how we do that. But that's what I would like to recommend when we get to the discussion about it. And I would like to, I've not seen the site yet. I've not been invited to look at this site at all. So I'd like to see it, and I'd like to talk to people and be involved in that as much as I can with local members. Obviously, I don't want to step on toes of local members because they know the area much better than I do. I know the community centre is well used. I've been there several times, but I've not seen the piece of land yet. So yes, I'd like to recommend this, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think we need to understand this is got a lot of history, but it is sequential. This, and what we're asked to do tonight is to reserve it for this specific purpose. And I don't think we'll add anything else onto that because there are lots of complexities moving forward. So, Councillor Jeff Young, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just an important message regarding allotments. They're a key social requirement and important to retain. We know there's an increasing need for allotments, and they are a key issue in climate change for providing fresh vegetables, etc. So now, I wouldn't want the message to go out that we're going to be building over allotments. Thank you.
Without replacing the allotment provision. Yeah. Quite clearly, you can have a house unless it has a glass floor and some extraordinary new technology with carrots growing underneath it. So, but without any levity, you know, your point is well made. I'm wondering if what we also want to do in this recommendation is make sure that we're protecting the community centre in some way, because it would look as if what would be wanted is, with the new houses, it's quite clear there is the demand for the community centre to go on in one form or another. And I wonder if we could amend the recommendation to that the housing land at Milray Rise is reserved for affordable social housing development and a community centre subject to planning permission. I don't know if anybody, any members of Cabinet would be happy to accept that as an amendment to that recommendation. Councillor Hayward, thank you very much. Anybody else happy to do that one? Councillor Ledger, thank you very much. Okay, coming to Councillor Ledger then, please.
Just keep it quick. I'm happy to second, Chair. You haven't got a second yet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Rickson.
I was just going to do the same. So I think if we just move to the vote and vote that in.
Right, it is therefore with literally some relief that we go to the vote on this, whilst thanking John before we go so very much for the report and all the team. This has been a very complex, almost United Nations style cross-member, cross-officer thing. And I think we should make it clear as an administration that we would very much like to see a key social housing project developed there with all of the other provisos with regard to the community centre and allotments borne in mind at all times. But we've got to start building some social housing.
Yeah, Chair, sorry to interrupt. I know you haven't invited me, but when I spoke, I did specifically just mention social housing. I wonder if there's any problems whether other members would accept it if we took the phrase affordable housing out of this and just made it social housing.
I wonder if it's too soon to do that because, yeah, I think I'm looking at our strategic planning portfolio holder, and I think that might be, we could revisit that, Jack, a little bit later down the line. Is that okay with you? I'm just saying this thing, let's do this sequentially. Let's get this land allocated first. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Right, accept that.
Okay, thank you. Much appreciated. Right, thank you. In which case, can we go to the vote then? Green ticks for yes, red crosses for no, as ever. Okay, thank you very much, Cabinet. That's 9 unanimous of those present. Thank you, John, again. Right, can we reconvene, please, at 8:35? 8:35 and take a break now. Officers, thank you very much.
No, still in the meeting, 4 items to go.
Ariane, you need to mute.
Hi, Amanda. Hi, Amanda. I think we've all returned in the chamber.
Yes, good to go, Chair.
Okay, okay, should we go live then? Thank you.
Yes, ready when you are, Chair.
Okay, let's go then, please, Amanda. Can you all go back on mute, please? Anybody who isn't. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. After that brief break, we now resume the agenda and we go to agenda item 21, the safeguarding policy refresh, however you never quite sure how to say this word. And we've got a report again from John Golding, our strategic lead, housing, health and environment. John, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is another policy on our policy register that requires an update and a refresh. You might recall, I think last meeting I brought the equalities policy to Cabinet for updating. So I've represented the policy here with again minimal changes from the earlier version. And I think it's worth saying that safeguarding is all about keeping people safe, free from exploitation, financial, physical and other exploitation, free from harm, abuse and neglect. So this policy sits quite well with our health and wellbeing activity and some of the work that we do in environmental health and housing and a number of other service disciplines. This policy is the product of work that the Devon districts have undertaken. So it's a common policy that's been adopted across the county. It draws on good practice and experience in the areas of safeguarding. And as you will have seen, it picks up on a number of the statutory duties that we and other partner agencies have in respect of children and adults. So safeguarding is core business for us. It's a genuine multi-agency activity that we undertake in liaison with colleagues in health, probation, education, police, social services. So it's truly multi-agency. The policy is one thing, and hopefully members will adopt it this evening, but probably more importantly is how we embed the policy in our services. And you'll see in the policy there are roles for our service leads and managers that we need to periodically refresh their training and raise awareness of the importance of safeguarding. So, some areas of service have more likelihood to use the policy than others. So particularly in housing, housing benefits, environmental health, countryside and leisure, where staff typically come in to observe situations that might need us to activate our safeguarding policy. So we try to administer this duty well, and if Cabinet agree this evening that the policy is updated in the way proposed, then we'll cascade that out throughout our staff with some further training and awareness raising. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Always good to see these things, these key things refreshed. You need to get it out of the filing cabinet every now and then, have a good look. Councillor Brewster Sarum, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I was going to say, as a school governor myself, my own experience, and backed up by that of an Ofsted inspection, which the school has just undertaken, is that one of the key issues is safeguarding. And I think that point 1.6 is very relevant. It's about the procedures on how to report and handle incidents where we suspect abuse or neglect. So I think John's report was absolutely spot on, and I commend it very much, and refer everyone to para 1.6 about the actual reporting, because that's how we solve any issues as and when they arise. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Councillor Sarum. Always very useful to be able to benefit from the knowledge of members, and thank you for that. Councillor Steve Gazzard, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, John, for an excellent report. We can never do too much for safeguarding, and I hope Cabinet will endorse it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's quite a simple recommendation, and that's where this debate is focused, to ensure that we have a fit-for-purpose safeguarding policy in place for this organisation. Councillor Andrew Moulding, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Safeguarding we've discussed before, and we have brought up the subject of members being included in any safeguarding policy, and I think it's mentioned in this, but it will be interesting to see how that comes out when the policy is adopted and implemented. So I'd be interested to see and want to make sure that safeguarding of people from members or safeguarding members themselves is something that we should consider in this policy. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I think I'll come back to John on that, John. It's sort of not what this is about as far as I understand it, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, through you, Chair, the policy does cover members. I mean, mainly it's staff that come across situations that need either referral or managing. But equally, we are aware, and the policy does cover the fact that members equally can observe situations that they're not comfortable with and might need to escalate that or discuss with me as the safeguarding lead for the council, and we can affect a referral to safeguarding experts should that be necessary. But one thing I ought to pick up perhaps is some updated training for members as well as staff. And Dave Whelan, who you heard from earlier, and myself are working up a programme where Dave's going to roll out some training, and with your approval, we'll ensure that we include members in that.
That's really welcome. Thank you very much, John, for helping us back to the core of the debate. Councillor Sarah Jackson, please.
Thank you, John. And I'm really glad that you picked up on that, because I've been undertaking a little bit of research generally about safeguarding policies, and certainly other authorities have picked up on member training as a good route forward to ensure safeguarding for all, and also to help manage risks to members of the public, to members and to the council as a whole. So thank you for this report. It's welcome, and thank you for your suggestion around member training.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jack Rowland, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was simply going to move the recommendation as written in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. Councillor Megan Armstrong, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll second that as well, but I just wanted to check with John. Funnily enough, there was an LGA modern day slavery webinar this afternoon, which I attended, and I just wanted to double check, because I know we discussed modern day slavery a few years ago under the previous administration, didn't we? And I think we had speakers as well, and I just wanted to check that we do have a statement on that as a local authority. Can you just advise me on that? I think we do, don't we? Or if we don't, yep. And also just to take up further training on that, because it was really quite, it's obvious it's getting worse in this country, modern day slavery in various ways. And I think it would be good to just revisit that at some point if we have time, perhaps have some training in that, and so that we can be aware. There was a big long discussion about how local authorities should be aware of these issues and what we need to be looking out for and how we can help. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Megan. John, please.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, it is covered by the policy. It's on page 141. There's reference in paragraph 116 to modern day slavery. So the kind of, it's a high level overarching type policy, but it does cover that as well as the more traditional, if you like, safeguarding areas of children and vulnerable adults.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So just to be clear, the reference there that John has made is to the introduction on page 141.1.1.6, and it says the Modern Slavery Act 2015. Further information can be found out. That's a good question, and thank you for the clarification as well. Okay, so we have a proposer. Does anybody remember if we had a seconder? I think Megan was seconding as well. So can we go to a vote on that, please? Thank you very much. Okay, and that's unanimous. Thank you very much, committee. Right, now we go to our next agenda item 22, mobile homes, fit and proper person fee charge and policies. Now, I'm looking at my chair's script and I don't know if we have an exciting guest speaker on this or not. Can any officer Oh, we do have. Okay, I'm so sorry, Mr. Harding. It's not on my script. So over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. I'm Jody Harding. I'm Principal Environmental Health Officer for Private Sector Housing. Good evening. I'm introducing a new piece of legislation which has the snappy title of the Mobile Homes Requirement for Managers of Sites to be a Fit and Proper Person. We've recommended a fee and a fee policy and a determination policy to implement this new piece of law. The law is aimed for owners, managers and responsible persons of commercial, residential, mobile home sites or mixed use park residential home sites. So these excludes tourist caravan sites and single unit family owned run mobile home sites. So we do have some gypsy and traveller sites that will be included in this fit and proper person test. And we have done an equality impact assessment and it is low risk. We recommend that there's a fee which goes with the fee policy and the application form. This is a legal requirement under the regulations. We recommend that the fee is £345.60. This is per application form and covers the fit and proper person test for 5 years. It applies to England, and the fee and fee policy and the determination policy is for East Devon. So I've adapted it for our use. The piece of law comes into effect on the 1st of July. We call it a transition period from the 1st of July to the 30th of September. So we've sent out an introductory letter to the site owners in June, introducing this new piece of legislation. And applications with the appropriate fee need to be submitted by the 30th of September. The register for the fit and proper person test opened on the 1st of October 2001. The fit and proper person tests will last for 5 years per person, and so it's one fee for that time. The fee covers the processing of the application of the fit and proper person test, the determination and the maintenance of the register. The register is a public register, will be published on our website and accessible to anybody that requests this in writing. The fee covers what is the requirements set out in the regulations, and I've attached a calculation of the proposed fees. We probably will review the fee after we've done the fit and proper person test this year, and we'll review it probably in 2022. This is after we've actually been able to calculate the time that we've spent processing and maintaining the fit and proper person test. The fee policy and the determination policy is aimed to make sure that we're transparent and fair to all site owners. The fit and proper person test is to ensure that we're preventing harassment of our vulnerable residents, to stop and determine rogue landlords, to ensure sites are well managed and are safe for our vulnerable residents. The fee policy is needed so that we can recover the costs of officer time for processing the application and maintaining the fee, and it's a legal requirement under the law. It's a cost recovery exercise. So therefore, I would ask that we recommend to adopt the fee policy and the determined policy and to agree the fee of £345.60. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Jody. From my own personal knowledge of how some of these sites are run, within East Devon, this seems to be an extremely welcome development. So thank you very much for outlining that so clearly and for an excellent report. Members, can I look to see if there's anybody outside of Cabinet who wish to speak about that? Councillor Steve Gassard, please. Over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, can you just tell me, is this a brand new post that the District Council will be creating, or are we using staff from existing positions? And how many applications do you think that you'll get you'll receive back. That might be a bit difficult, but if you've got an estimation of how many letters you sent out, that might be good. Thank you.
Jody, are you happy to answer those?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Councillor Gazzard. I've written to 8 site owners in June. We're going to do a Gypsy and Traveller site count on the 27th of July. So we will investigate any other sites that may come into this fit and proper test. So we anticipate that we have between 8 and 10 sites. We will have to process the fit and proper test within our own offices, so in our current resources. So we've allocated resources for the next 3 months so that we're able to process these.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Harding. So nobody else from outside of Cabinet. If I come to Councillor Paul Hayward then first.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, can I ask Mr. Harding, and I think I might know the answer, is this a fee which includes VAT?
Yeah, please, Jody, you got the answer to that one?
We understand from our legal representation that we don't have to charge VAT on this.
My only thought is it coincidentally is a nice round sum without pennies if you add VAT to it, but it just seems an incredibly precise amount of money. And I'm sure it makes no difference to Simon. Simon's rubbing his hands together, whether it's, £345.60 or £350, but it's just one of those amounts that you think only a council could dream up that. In the private sector, we just round it up. But no, thank you very much indeed for clarifying.
I won't ask you to comment on that, Jody, that's okay. But as my mother used to say, look after the pennies, Councillor Hayward, and the pounds will look after themselves. Right, so Councillor Megan Armstrong, please.
Oh yes, thank you. Yes, I was actually speaking to Jody yesterday, and we were talking about this and other things. And yes, I'm happy to propose this, and because I know some Gypsy and Traveller sites are included, and chair that group when it meets again, when we can all meet face to face. So yes, I'm happy to propose it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Jack Rowland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Struggling to unmute myself tonight. Must be a lesson there for me somewhere. Thank you, Jody, for the report, and I'll actually second the recommendation. But I did have a question, sort of related to what Councillor Hayward was just saying about the somewhat strange amount of £345.60. I notice it says it must be cost neutral for the council, so I assume some clever costing has been done to arrive at that figure. But does that mean an adjoining authority could be charging a different amount depending on their calculations, which could call into question from some people as to why potentially an adjoining authority is charging a lower amount than what we are?
Jody.
Thank you for that question. Yes, it's this is very important, which is why it's important that our policy is clear and transparent. So I have I've fed some dates, some times into a spreadsheet with our hourly costs, and it came up with this figure. I didn't really want to change that figure, and we have been trying to do a consistency exercise across our local authorities, but everyone's been having to go to Cabinet quite late. Everyone's in a similar position. So if a lot of councils haven't published their fee policies and their fees until fairly recently. I've only seen 3 so far. 2 are about £250 and 1 is for £370. So it's important that we review the policy and the fee in a year's time, so that we can adjust it for the next round of fit and proper person test. So what we'll do is we're going to be recording our time that we spend on the fit and proper person test. We do have to consider everything that's covered in the regulation, so it is quite complex. but when it comes back to for the companies to reapply, we will be able to adjust the fee if it's too high at the moment, or if it's not enough, then we can put it up. So we've had to go for a figure to get it up and running, but we are in a position to review that. We will review that, and yes, we will be criticised because we're not consistent. But I need to get a figure into the application form. I'm very much aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jodie. Okay, thank you very much. So we've got a proposer and a seconder for that. Committee, can we please take that to the vote? Yes, and that's unanimous again. So thank you very much, committee, and thank you, Jodie, for the report, and good luck with this piece of work. Coming next, please, to agenda item 23, developing member and staff relationships. And we have introduction to the report here from our CEO, Mr. Mark Williams. Over to you, please, Mark.
Thank you. So some of you will recall the statement that Councillor Loudon made at the previous Cabinet meeting. I circulated that statement to all members of staff, and also you'll be aware that Unison wrote on behalf of its members to all councillors recently in response to that statement too. When he made the statement, Councillor Loudon was keen to ensure that the matter was properly followed up. And so what this report seeks to do is to make a number of recommendations to ensure that we can adopt a comprehensive approach to following up, if you like, the different strands that arise from the statement. And if you go back to the scrutiny report that I did, the implications arising from the staff survey. And you'll see from the recommendations that they do interact between the ongoing role of Cabinet and the leader of the council and the group leaders, the ongoing role of the Standards Committee through the Standards Working Group, work that myself and the Monitoring Officer need or want to do, and then also towards the end at recommendation 7, potentially a role for the Personnel Committee in terms of keeping staff morale and related staff surveys with that committee's ongoing work plan. The other thing to add is, I think, probably just for you to note, but also there will be a role for the Audit and Governance Committee in terms of corporate governance aspects arising from the Code of Conduct and implications generally for what the sorts of things that the external auditors have regard to. So probably best if I hand over perhaps to Councillor Loudon now, if he wishes to highlight any of the particular issues that are raised, because essentially my report summarises his statement and then also some of his ideas that were included in a draft paper that he discussed with myself and Henry.
Thank you very much, Mark. Absolutely, and indeed that makes a lot of sense to come to Councillor Loudon next. And I'd like to thank you and the Monitoring Officer and Councillor Loudon for many hours of work, many hours of work that you've all put into this over the last 3 or 4 months. So introducing then Councillor Loudon, please, who's the portfolio holder for this area. John, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark. I'm happy to wait and see if anybody else wishes to come in, and then come in after that, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. In which case, can we come to Councillor Helen Parr, please, sitting outside of the Cabinet. Councillor Parr, please.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask the Chief Executive whether he thinks that he has completed the tasks that the Scrutiny Committee resolved should be done at their meeting of March the 4th, and whether therefore he'll soon be able to come to that committee and update it in the light of the completion of the above work. Thank you.
Okay, Mark, please.
Yeah, so essentially, following on from the first scrutiny meeting, the matter was discussed in detail with my managers, the strategic leads and the service leads, and each team was tasked to look at their own action plans to address the issues that were raised by their teams through the survey. So that work has been done, and I have a report that I've just got to reread, if you like, double check and finalise. The intention being that I'm bringing it to scrutiny committee at the end of this month. I believe there has been a conversation between the current chair of the personnel committee, the chair of council, and the chair of scrutiny as to where that report should go. But as things presently stand, I've set aside some time tomorrow afternoon with a view to it going on to the scrutiny agenda for the end of this month. Sorry, in terms of your wider question about is all the work completed, I mean, this is an ongoing conversation, if you like. So in a way, I would say that the report is an update report, and it will give the opportunity to also familiarise councillors with all the different steps that are being taken. So, for example, some of the reports that are on the Cabinet agenda tonight are a reflection of some of the issues that were highlighted in the survey, because it did, cut across a number of issues.
Thank you very much for that, Mark. And I was going to just add that in as well. And you're absolutely right that the staff survey that was presented to scrutiny, I think in February, it was important that it covered member-staff relationships, but it also, of course, did cover other issues that staff had understandably within the organisation at the moment in the trying circumstances. And I know that you've been doing a lot of work with SMT and the team, and as you say, it's very helpful that the fruit of that's already coming through Cabinet, and thank you for that. So, Councillor Bruce Thesarum, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think that, yes, everyone who's read this report recognises that staff morale is absolutely very crucial, and the role of the staff surveys are very important. So my question to Mark is, how fast will you be able to respond to the surveys or ensure that they get implemented in the future so that people have confidence? And I note that a lot of the items that we've listed under points 1 to 7, I'm recalling the fact that Sue Howell gave guidance to us, for example, on emails about 2 years ago, and I'm not sure if that was fully taken on board by members. So that's an example I pick where democratic services do try and assist us, but whether or not in our enthusiasm as members, we still get carried away and still perhaps fire across emails to one another without properly considering the actions that will happen. So I don't think that's necessarily one for Mark to answer, but I touch on that as being an issue that I've noted. But I think for Mark, the question is how quick will you implement the surveys? Thank you.
Yes, Mark, do you want to pick up on that latter question of Bruce?
So you'll recall that the survey we did, the Health and Safety Executive Survey, was a targeted and specific survey. So it asked staff to reflect upon their experiences during the previous 6 months when the survey was conducted. The intention is to carry out a further survey later on this autumn to reflect on whether things have improved, priorities have altered, stances have changed. But then in terms of quickly implementing things, some things are potentially capable of a quick fix, some things aren't. And best description I can give you, I think, is that I see this as more of a journey, that this particular council, in terms of the 4-year, the 4-year term of a council, it's a particular journey that this council is on. and it will be something I think that will require attention, up until 2023 in all probability, because it has given rise to a whole host of issues that perhaps in previous councils we haven't had to address with the same degree of attention, but that comes down to the circumstances that changed in the last all-out elections. So for me, it's we are where we are. We have a good understanding of why we got to where we are and what we need to do to hopefully progress away from where we are. That work is underway, and it does require the consistent attention of all the political groups on the council, and then also the senior officers in terms of the training that can be provided, the guidance and advice, and then our day-to-day role as managers of our staff, and how we ensure that morale is as high as it can be within the organisation.
Thank you, Mark. I think that's very helpful, and I look forward as one of the members to joining you on this journey.
Very good. Can I just ask, Mark, are you concerned, let's say as of today, that there is a general ongoing grave problem with staff morale, today, or is it your, I suppose, anecdotal? Do you feel that things have improved this year, or do you feel it's just sort of still stuck in the mud, so to speak?
I think I would summarise it as saying that there has been a perceived improvement since my report to scrutiny, but I would say that staff morale is fragile, and we shouldn't assume that things can be remedied overnight. So staff morale is fragile, and there is a big issue about how honestly or sincerely committed councillors, for argument's sake, are to the need to have regard to the requirements of the code of conduct, and then from our part as officers to ensure that there is no excuse, because all the training has been provided such that the Priti Patel type defence of bullying, which was I've never honestly ever intended to bully anyone. Well, so be it, but you didn't. Type of thing. But that we just pull all the levers we need to pull to make sure that we don't go back to where we were, really.
Can I just ask then, broadly, given that what we're hoping to do is move forward with this, broadly, are you happy to say that you welcome the initiative that Councillor Loudon has taken here and the statements that have been made on behalf of the Democratic Alliance moving forward? I mean, is that a positive?
Yes, I've said to my staff that I welcome it. It was essential that it was done, but it has been done, and I welcome it.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Megan Armstrong, please.
Just a quick one, Chair. Does this report then go on to full council? I wasn't sure whether this just stops with Cabinet or will it be discussed further at full council? Thank you.
Mark.
So, there aren't as such any recommendations in this report that go to full council, although clearly the minutes of this meeting will go to council, so it can be called. But you'll see from the recommendations that it's essentially inviting a fair bit of work in progress to commence or be undertaken, and council, as ever, retains the ability to have a watching oversight and to debate the matter if it wants to.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think from a personal point of view, I particularly welcome, Mark, which I hadn't been aware, but it's excellent that you're proposing to revisit the staff survey, so to speak. I mean, when approximately are you looking to do that at sort of, November, December or January, February? When would you anticipate that happening?
I'm working towards sort of late October, early November at this stage.
Okay, thank you
there is the only reason I slightly hesitated. There is other work underway, and I want to see that completed. So all relevant, considerations to be taken into account, basically.
Okay, thank you very much. So we don't have any other speakers at the moment from Cabinet. I'm not sure. I think maybe we've got Councillor Loudon who very kindly just step back for a moment. So, John, would you like to come forward now then?
Thank you, Chair. I thought it was appropriate to allow everybody else to have their say before I, as portfolio holder, came in. And it's useful to hear what people do have to say. I think Mark's report obviously touches on the survey, and there's been a lot of focus on that. But we've also got to recognise that it deals with matters beyond that. It's not just the survey, and people need to understand that. But from my perspective, I think I have to say, I think it's sad the report of this nature has to be brought forward, as it highlights what is a collective failure across the chamber in maintaining the required levels of appropriate engagement, both member to member and member to staff. And I've said this before, and I hope I don't have to keep saying it. The recommendations contained in with this report are necessary to reset the engagement dial within the council. And I believe that once we've given effect to each and every aspect of these recommendations, then each of us and every member of staff should then have their confidence restored that we have processes and guidance that will bring respect and dignity back into the role of an elected member of this council, because I think that's gone in some places. However, once we've achieved this, it will be for each member, each group, and each group leader to ensure that the high standards of behaviour and conduct are maintained going forward. And that's across all 60 of us. As I say, it's sad that in this council, in 2021, we have to even consider having a set of recommendations such as these. In conclusion, I must, as you've done, Chair, I must thank Mark as Chief Executive, Henry as Monitoring Officer, and Ian Thomas as Chair of Council for their input, their engagement and their advice in this matter, as well as their support. And that's what's led to the report that Mark has brought before you this evening. So in conclusion, I propose that Cabinet endorses the report and accepts its recommendations in full.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Can I look for a seconder for that, please? Councillor Rowland, thank you very much. Okay, committee then, can we go? Oh, yes. Can we, no more yellow hands, so can we go to a vote now on that, please? Green ticks for yes, red crosses for no. Okay, and that's unanimous of those here present at Blackdown House. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mark. And I look forward to all of this, as I'm sure we all do, across all sections of the chamber, moving forward in a positive and respectful direction. And certainly that's how it's felt to me in recent months. But if anybody has a different perception, please let me know. But nobody has spoken to me on this theme for a very long time. But I will be ever vigilant on this. Right, we now go on to agenda item 24, Seaton Jurassic, and we have a report here, and we have Mr. Tim Child again, who is our service lead for place assets and commercialisation, who I think I can safely describe as a busy man. Tim, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And yeah, me again, requesting, at least in part, an additional budget. So similar thing perhaps to the earlier report. So yeah, this is in respect of Seaton Jurassic. So this follows on from a report from our strategic lead for finance, Simon Davey, back in May on Seaton Jurassic, which at that point was an update report. This report provides a further update, sets out progress made since May in respect of Devon Wildlife Trust's exit from the building on the 17th of September. The report sets out in quite a lot of detail the steps that both we and Devon Wildlife Trust are working through to enable a smooth transition of property back to us in September. The report also details a request for a capital budget to appoint external consultants to support the delivery of necessary remedial works. This particular work at this stage is very much investigation works, really, at this stage. And it's worth pointing out that the works required, and indeed the works we need to do to get to the bottom of exactly what's required, the liability behind what's required and how much it's going to cost, would have been needed irrespective of whether DWT were leaving or not. In terms of sort of the wider project, I want to highlight that a full options report on future uses of the building is intended to come back to October Cabinet, and officers will be working with Cabinet members, but also ward members, and there was a recent meeting with ward members on this very issue to help inform that options report. So that options report will be about the future use for the building and how we wish to see that building used. This particular item tonight, apart from the general update, is specifically in respect of a request for a budget to undertake some investigatory works, looking at various building defects within the building. So what am I asking for? I'm asking for a recommendation from Cabinet to Council for the sum of £75,000 to be made available from the Asset Maintenance Reserve, the same reserve that I talked about earlier this evening. This work, which we can then commission, will identify the detail of what's needed and the liability to then inform a report back to Cabinet in December, most likely requesting a further budget at that time for putting right those defects. So just to summarise, this is an update report and a request for an initial £75,000. There'll then be a report intended back to Cabinet in October with a detailed options appraisal on what we do with this building moving forward. And then following these investigatory works, if indeed the approval is given this evening and then by Council towards the end of the month, then a further report in December back to Cabinet and then on to Council regarding a budget to undertake the works themselves. I think I've sort of summarised the various elements of the report. There are two particular recommendations. One is to note the update contained within the report, and then the second recommendation is in respect of the £75,000, and I'm happy to obviously take any questions now.
Thank you very much, Tim. Indeed. Councillor Brewster-Saran, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to say, Tim, I think it is, we all agree that it's a very regrettable situation that has come to pass. And I just wanted to ask you a very general question, because I know that you're not looking at it until October, but looking at places, as you saw in Exmouth as well, where there's been an idea of a need for an interpretation or a visitor centre, would you say that buildings of this nature that we have now found ourselves in Seaton of this position, have they reached that sort of the end of the road, or do you think generally, would you think they've got a future? Because I know that, you know, in Exmouth we've had lots of interest in an idea of interpretation, and I know that Councillor Hookway and I have been trying to manage people's expectations, and we've got this issue in front of us this evening. So I know you're probably not going to be able to tell us much more until October, but I'd welcome your thoughts on how you see the future of buildings like this.
Councillor Terham, if you'll forgive me, I'm going to spare Tim from speculating on that. You're quite right. I think October is the time for that. But I think I can offer an opinion. It's just a layman's opinion, if you want. Yeah, I wouldn't have spent £5 million like that. So the next, anybody else from outside of Cabinet at all? No. So Councillor Paul Haywood, Councillor Helen Parr. Oh, sorry, you're shaking your head. You would have spent £5 million like that. Okay, Councillor Paul Haywood, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm going to dive straight in and propose that we do note the report and that we approve this recommendation to take £75,000 from the asset maintenance reserve to allow the works to be done, the exploratory works. I'm grateful to Tim for this report. There has been an immense amount of social media and public interest, commentary, criticism, discussion about this issue. And this report clearly and without emotion outlines the legal obligations that East Devon has. It outlines the financial obligations we have and the funding partners. And it also clearly outlines the maintenance works that are required. So I hope any member of the public who has a criticism, has an interest, would read this report and would understand why, to coin that rather tired phrase now, we are where we are, and why East Devon must dot the I's and must cross the T's to take this forward without rushing, without being dramatic about it. It is an unsatisfactory situation, and Tim and his team are working through it, and this £75,000 ask will allow us to undertake the proper due diligence and to find out exactly what needs to be done. And once that's done, we can then assess what works are needed. It then gives East Devon the ability with our partners to make sure this building is put to the best possible use for Seaton, for East Devon, but also that it minimises any future financial risk to this council. So again, I'm not going to comment on the items that have been discussed. It's just conjecture. But I applaud this report. I thank Mr. Tim for it, and I heartily approve that we move forward with this as judiciously and expeditiously as possible.
Thank you very much, Councillor Haywood. I heartily agree with everything you've just said there, and we must be positive and move forward, and whilst reflecting that there is very, very, very ancient history in this, isn't there, of course, with the Seaton Jurassic. And there is, of course, this other word that politicians have to use sometimes, which I'll use here. For our administration, this is a legacy issue. This is a legacy issue. So looking for Councillor Nick Hookway, please.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you to Tim for his report. This is clearly a very serious issue, and I welcome his work towards trying to resolve this problem. And in response to Councillor Desarum, I think it's very important that an interpretation centre was set up, and interpretation centres are in fact encouraged. This particular one was designed to promote the World Heritage Site, of which we should be, as a council, very proud, because it is, I think, a facility that many councils would give their eye teeth for. I think there are lessons to be learned, and I think that the course room for interpretation centres in Exmouth will allow us to have some interesting discussions later on about how we can deliver there as well. And if necessary, Chair, I'd like to second the report, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hookway, and enjoy another little segue into Exmouth territory from Seaton. So this is historical and geographical. Okay, back to Seaton and one of its most many distinguished members, Councillor Jack Rowland, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure I'd use the phrase distinguished, but thank you anyway. This is entirely an important issue for Seaton because it was part of the regeneration plans for Seaton anyway. And I've got to be honest, it distresses me to see that a building that's only 5 years old does need this exploratory work to get to the bottom of what all the current issues are. I was going to second the recommendation, but Councillor Hookway beat me to that. But I think it's essential because until we find out the extent of the issues there and what the potential remedy is, can we then consider in a future options report? I mean, the good news is that I know that there's considerable interest already been expressed in the building, and I'm sure that there can be a solution found to this which can be to the benefit of Seaton, which is so heavily dependent on tourism and visitor numbers coming in. I think the problems that Devon Wildlife Trust have experienced is classic in some respects, because the initial what was on offer there is, in my opinion, the sort of thing which doesn't attract repeat visitors. It's very much along the lines of, once you've seen it, would you really want to go back and see it again? And I think they recognise that, which is why they explored what it would cost to upgrade what was on offer there. And that's the thing that's really tripped them over, because of the costs of what would be involved. They just couldn't bear that cost, which is why they now have asked to break the lease. So I was going to use the phrase to repeat what Councillor Hayward said: we are where we are. But I think it's essential we do have to spend this money to find out the full extent of the issues there, to consider an options report as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowland. I think there's a recommendation I'd like to make, but it isn't appropriate to this report. So, which is a very clean and forward-looking piece of work and proposal. But as a personal comment, this project must be scrutinised. It must be scrutinised. And we are in a difficult position with this administration, because if we attempt to scrutinise that which has happened in the past, and this was a big ticket item in quite controversial circumstances in Seaton, as people of the Axe Valley will remember, we then get criticised for, you're raking over the coals, you're having a go at people, all this kind of stuff. But I think certainly I am happy to talk to whoever is the new chair of scrutiny, I don't know who it is, to see if this can be brought forward in due course, because the questions have come up tonight which do need answering, but absolutely nothing to do with Mr. Child's report. So, Cabinet, we're at the end of debate, so can we, and we have a proposer and a seconder, please can we take a vote on that now? Thank you very much. And for the benefit of those watching, there are 9 cabinet members present here tonight, and they have all voted in favour of that. So I now need to come to agenda item. Thank you, Tim, very much for that, as ever. Agenda item 25, which is exclusion of press and public for our next item. And I need to come back over to the Vice Chair to take us forward for a few moments.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to. May I propose that under section 100A, open bracket 4, close bracket, of the Local Government Act 1972, the public, including the press, be excluded from the meeting, as exempt information of the description set out in the agenda is likely to be disclosed, and on balance, the public interest is in discussing this item in private session, open brackets, part B, close brackets. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And so the Vice Chair has moved that. I think.
Oh,
okay.
Bit premature on the recording.
I'll come back to you, Chair, when the live streaming has.
Amanda, we need to have the vote before we break it. But don't worry, if we can just still do the vote, though, please.
We'll do the vote anyway. Henry, we need a seconder for that as well.
Yes,
I think.
please.
Okay, can I have a seconder for that? For Councillor Rowland, just to my left there, so I just saw him first. Committee, can we vote on that, please, now? okay, Megan, don't worry. Right, we're there. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. In which case, for anybody still watching, members of the public and who aren't able to stay on for this last item, thank you very much for being with us tonight. And I'll ask Amanda to turn off the live